13th, 2022 regular school committee meeting. I would ask that those who are here in the room with us to please join in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so just want to start, if there's any public comment, anybody that wanted to make a comment outside of what our regular agenda is, you can come up now. Otherwise, we are going to go ahead and move into Mr. Bishop and take you out of order if you would like to come up, because your item is shorter than some that come after you. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for being flexible and taking me out of order. I really appreciate it. So I know it's a pretty busy agenda, so I'll try to be quick here. I'm coming tonight to get the approval to fund 2 new clubs at the high school and programs. So the first is our work study program, and the second is adding an additional stipend for our senior project program. So I'll start with the work study program. You may remember back in the spring of 2020, we were working closely with the DESE and former Assistant Superintendent Jen Parson with our work with our CVTE, which was kind of 3-pronged. It was dual enrollment, job shadow, as well as the work study program. And the work study program was really successful. We had about a dozen students do some type of work study program over the course of the 2 years. And part of the work with the DESE is we got a grant to fund an advisor. So that person tracked hours for the students, kind of maintained the students' grades, checked in with not only the student on a weekly basis, but also the employer or wherever the person was doing that work study. And then also had the student complete the MyCap, which is a document that the DESE has put together. It's basically a tool for students to kind of capture their experience and the documents that they've collected over the time. But unfortunately, with the grant running out, we don't have funding for an advisor at this point. So we currently have 5 students and 1 student kind of in the pipeline who wants to do a work study. We've been kind of piecing it together right now with either counselors or administrators being the point person. And we just don't know if that's going to be sustainable if we want to keep this program. I think it's really important for a lot of our students to have this option. So we are looking to have a stipend for $2,500 for that position, to have a person be kind of overseeing the program and working with our students and the different companies and organizations that students will be working with. So that's the first ask. The second is adding an additional advisor for our senior project. So as you may know, we have a senior project at the end of the senior year. So usually it's the Monday we get back from April vacation. Students put together an application. And for the last month of the school year, they don't attend class unless they take AP classes, and they kind of dive into a passion of theirs. We've had projects such as volunteering at local hospitals. Some have been teaching assistants in the district here at different schools. We've had a student record an album. We've had students design clothes, some really cool projects over the years. And I would say leading up to the pandemic, it was probably between 35 and 55 seniors that would take part in this program. We did not have it the year of 1920. Then the last 2 years, we've seen a massive increase in the number of students, and Robert has probably gone in and seen the different projects in the athletic center. It's a really cool day. At the end of the project, we had all the students set up around the athletic center. We had 100 or so the year after the 20 and 21 school year, and then last year we had over 200 students take part, which was great, but unmanageable for one person to kind of oversee. And I think when you have one person overseeing that number of students, probably the quality of projects has gone down a little bit. So we want to make sure that we keep high expectations, that we have an additional person to help out. Maybe they can break off and have, be able to see half the students and work with the different mentors and internships that the students have. And we also put together a committee. I emailed staff. We have about 8 teachers that are going to be part of a senior project committee that are going to review applications and help the advisors when it comes to picking projects, making sure they are meaningful and useful, and the students will be able to get a good experience out of it. So based on the number of students we're seeing, we're hoping to get an additional stipend. So there'd be 2 each at $2,500 apiece. We have 1 right now for $2,500. So overall, we're asking for about $5,000 for 2 different stipend positions. So happy to answer any questions that you have about either one of the programs.
I'd love to know what kind of work study the kids have been doing. Like what kind of places have they been going?
Yeah, so it's kind of a wide range. Yeah, we've had a few students work at some local auto body shops.
Yeah.
We've had a student work at a local business in town.
Yeah.
We've had, a student work at Milford Hospital. Yeah, so we've had a little bit of kind of everything.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's been really cool. And of course, not to get too into the weeds, but there's a lot of like credits go along with that.
Yeah.
So if a student, certain amount of hours counts for a certain amount of credits. They can't replace English, their English, math, science, history, foreign language credits, but some of the elective credits they can replace with some of
That's
this work
very
study.
cool.
Yeah.
I love the idea of that.
Yeah.
I love both ideas. My question is budget, and that's why I'm looking at you. Where will the money come from?
Well, for now, we would use the stipend account. Sometimes clubs don't run. There's various pockets that may come up during the year.
That was my assumption, but just wanted to be clear on that.
I have one fast question. So the first year of 37 students, so if someone signed up to be the advisor and now it's jumped to 210, even splitting that in half, still 100 kids.
It's gonna be a
So
lot,
is that sustainable? You think?
Yes, so that's a
Okay.
great question.
Yeah.
So I only put 2018-19. We've been doing it for a number of years.
Okay.
And since probably I've been here since 2005, we've had a senior project in some way, shape, or form. I do think it's sustainable with two people and this committee that we're putting together to kind of review projects, have students come and present to us about what they want to do, why they want to do it, and then we'll make the decision if it's going to be an approved project or not. So I don't know if the number of 200 will continue based on some of the quality of projects we've seen lately. I think we want to make sure we kind of reset some expectations with the program. And I think it'll be manageable with two people. And my guess is it'll probably be about 150 or so kids. I don't know, Robert, if you started thinking about a senior project yet, but I know. I know a lot of students. Yeah, they will soon. So, yeah.
And they're volunteers. The committee, they're
They're mostly senior
they're-
teachers.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
All right.
because
All right.
again, if you have 210 out of 300 kids doing a senior project, just imagine what your government class looks like when 18 of 25 kids are not in class
That's a good
for the last
point.
month of
Yeah,
the school
yeah,
year.
yeah.
So there's a lot of things with the committee that we have to kind of iron up about what that might look like moving
Okay.
forward. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Definitely.
That's great. So I think we need probably two motions on this. So the first one, I would seek a motion to approve a new stipend position for the work study program of $2,500.
So moved.
So motion by Leah,
Second.
second by Holly. All those in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
That's fabulous. Passes. And then the second one, I would seek a motion to approve the additional stipend for the senior project of $2,500 also.
So moved.
Okay, motion by Jen.
Second.
Second by Leah. All those in favor?
Yes.
Aye. All right. Thank you so
Thank
much
you
for
so
coming.
much.
Definitely.
Really appreciate it.
Have a
Thanks
good
for the
night.
support. Yep. You too.
Okay, then that moves us into recognitions. Does anybody have any recognitions they want to share? Okay. Then we'll move into reports. Robert, do you have mind going first there?
Of course. So on October 1st, HHS teamed up with Black Earth Composting, which is what we were talking about a couple weeks ago, and this allows students and their families to donate compostable items and give them back to Black Earth Composting to be composted. One of the high school teachers, Mr. Scott, who teaches engineering, robotics, and hands-on activities and does many more extracurricular activities, was named one of the 12 semifinalists for Massachusetts Teacher of the Year, which is awesome. Over 20 colleges have come to Hopkinton High in the past 2 weeks. For anyone who is interested in applying to Massachusetts public schools, there's an information meeting at Neshoba Regional High School on October 18th. And then National Portfolio Day is coming up at HHS on October 23rd from 12 to 4 p.m. Hopkinton High School gives students who want to pursue a creative occupation an opportunity to have their portfolios reviewed by counselors and faculty from art and design colleges and universities. You can sign up for this in the student memo. And then Boston College is presenting a Women in Science and Technology program in the winter of 2023. This is a free program for high school girls interested in the STEM field. For 4 consecutive Saturdays, starting January 21st, 2023. Experiments ranging from biology to computer science to neuroscience will happen every Saturday at BC. Students accepted into this program will have the chance to experience a glimpse of what it's like as a college STEM student. And this registration deadline is December 22nd, 2022. And Hopkinton sports are doing very well. Each varsity sport has a winning record so far. And the varsity golf team just finished their regular season undefeated, 14-0, and won the Tri-Valley League. Boys soccer is 9-1-2, girls soccer is 8-3, field hockey is 5-2-3, and football is 4-1, and volleyball is 7-6.
Wow.
A lot of good stuff going on.
It's a good
right.
call.
Mr. Scott does do a lot of things. It is nice to
Yeah.
see him recognized, like many of our.
That's right.
Okay. Any questions?
I'm glad to hear the composting is actually going on.
Yep, and it's
Yeah.
being publicized very well. There's a massive poster in the cafeteria, and then there's some posters up in the hallway, which yeah, I think
So
it's
are
good.
there like good explanations on how to compost? Because that was one of the questions we had when they were setting up the project, right? Like how are people getting educated on what to bring in and
Yeah.
what they can actually
I'll have to read the posters, but the titles are up there, and for anyone interested in it, like the information's accessible.
That's great.
Thank you.
How do you think the kids, just, I mean, like in, 10 seconds or less, what's the vibe you're getting from the students? Do you think they're interested in it? They're
Yeah,
doing
I
it,
think
they're
there are
into
some
it?
students who have taken an eye to it
Yeah.
and who like it because students are interested in that type of stuff.
Right.
I don't have any statistics on how many people have signed up,
Right,
but
right.
I'm sure it's doing well, and it's very
Good.
publicized.
Cool.
That's great. Any update off the top of your head on the lines in the cafeteria?
Some days, well, as of recently, some days they've been the same as they were in the beginning of the year.
Okay.
Other days they've shrunk a lot, but
Okay.
I think it may have to do with what the cafeteria is serving. But it seems like, for the most part, like the median or the mean of the line is going down,
Okay.
than it was in the first couple weeks.
So headed in the right direction.
Yeah, yeah.
Great. Thank you.
I apologize for the interruption.
No.
All right, so that moves us into the HPS Summer Academic Enrichment Program report, and we have a very nice group here coming up.
Absolutely. Come on up, guys. All right, as my colleagues are getting settled, I'd like to thank Dr. Kavanaugh and the committee for the invitation to share a little bit about some of the summer work that was happening here in the town of Hopkinton this summer. They say that first impressions matter, and the first impression I got of teaching and learning in Hopkinton during my entry in July was getting the chance to walk the halls with my colleagues here and see some of the great work that was happening. It has, of course, not proven to be a false start relative to all the great work that's happening, but a very accurate and wonderful indicator of the work that's happening. Because this summer, for the second year in a row, for students who do not receive guaranteed summer programming as a result of their IEP through extended school years, we were able to offer both enrichment, remediation, and additional academic and pro-social support for our students. And so tonight what we'd like to do is walk you through a little bit about what that looked like, the successes that we experienced this summer, as well as some opportunities that we see for some incredible growth sustaining this work moving ahead. So tonight I'm joined by my colleagues, Ms. Moriarty, Ms. Suker, and Dr. Lavender. And in just a minute, each of them is going to walk through briefly their program, what we saw, a little bit about what was great, and a little bit about what could be even better moving ahead. But first, I love to keep you in suspense with some numbers. So, we are in the second year, and we hosted 3 programs this summer. You're going to hear about each one of them in just a second. The programs were supported by 27 teachers as well as 16 high school interns. We had 158 elementary students participate and 72 students at the middle and high school level participate. So what does this all mean? It means that this summer, Hopkinton, outside the domain of the extended school year for students receiving services as a result of their IEPs, Hopkinton provided 8,505 hours of instructional programming across our 3 programs for students. And so tonight what we're going to do is take a look at each one of those ever so briefly. I'll ask each of my colleagues to go through their program, and then if it's all right with the committee, we'll wait till the end and take any questions that you might have.
Great.
All right.
Thank you.
So I'm going to first turn it over to my colleague, Ms. Moriarty.
So I'm Deb Moriarty. I'm the elementary director of ELA. So thank you for having me tonight. I'm excited to talk about Focus. This was our second summer running Focus. Okay. So Focus is, the participants are based on their academic need. We look at the data measures that we use throughout the year, BAS, progress monitoring through STAR as well, and also even MCAS reporting. So based on that, we compile the list of students and invitations are then offered. we invite students from rising grade 1 through rising grade 6. Okay, and that's how we term them in the summer when they know what class they're in. This summer we set up our sessions a little bit differently than we did last summer. We have 15 sessions overall, which is exactly what we had last summer. This summer we did it over the course of 4 weeks, and we did 3 days a week, minus the last week, which we only did 2, right? So we did Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. In the morning, the kids come by 8 o'clock and they're gone before 11. So we like it. The teachers seem to like it as well in the terms of the setup. The parents like it because it still offers opportunity for long weekends. So it still gives everybody some time, but then we come in for a very short period of time where it's academically minded and socially minded. So in focus, I just have to look at my notes, right? We have academic blocks each morning. They're there for a little under 3 hours. There's 2 academic blocks. There's a literacy block and a math block, as well as a recreation block. There's about a 5-minute transition in between each time. They bring a snack as well, and they have a snack break. So we do the 2 academic blocks first. It's up to the teacher discretion if they're going to do math or literacy first. It's really up to them. And it's a very intense kind of 55-minute academics. And all of the curriculum that we utilize is created by myself and the math director, Shelley Moran, with input from teachers and things like that. And it's all just what were the key concepts from the past year? What are we going to then review to make sure kids are moving on with success going ahead? Like I said, they have those 2 academic blocks, little snack break in there, and then the last block, which is a little less than the hour, it's probably our shortest one, about 45 minutes, we have a structured recreation time. And this is where there's the teachers, as well as our high school interns, and we had a huge number of those this summer, which was fantastic, engage with the kids in social activities, whether it be painting, coloring even. It might just be listening to music and having some conversations. Or then, of course, there's also the playground, outdoor time. But the teachers and the interns are facilitating the play as well as the conversations, making sure no one, the child is off by themselves, bringing them in. If there's going to be a kickball game, the teacher or the intern is facilitating that game and bringing kids together in that way to kind of work on language as well as making connections with peers. Some of the things that we do in our academic blocks are in the literacy. There's a huge focus, of course, on phonics. What I did was we look at our foundations skills, what are the core concepts each year, and we review those every single day. We practiced phonemic awareness as well. We kind of spread out the Heggerty skills that we utilize in our K and 1. I also look at some of the phonemic awareness skills that upper grades might need and kind of reinforce some of those basic building blocks for a lot of these kids who might be struggling to read and fill some of those holes. There is a reading time every day where, of course, kids are being given text to have time to read and engage with text. There's 2 teachers in each classroom, and all of our teachers this summer in focus were Hopkinton School employees, which was really great, and they knew a lot of the kids already, which was really nice. We had 1 intern stationed in each classroom, and then we had floaters, as we called them, who did other jobs and tasks. So that was really nice. So it's a very nice, small adult to child ratio in terms of getting the skills that they need. It's very hands-on, a lot of the skills that they do. There's really not a lot of paper and pencil. We really encourage them to use whiteboards, the chalkboards, even just writing on the table and practicing their trick words. It's like, no, we don't need to necessarily pick up a pencil. We can practice it here. Some of the teachers will even go outside and the kids are practicing in the dirt and sand, just to, it's just meant to be different. They practice with Play-Doh and things like that. So it's meant to be a very engaging, kind of focused academic block that they engage in. And the teachers are kind of very, it's a lot of small group instruction. The teachers are with the kids in small groups. There's not a whole lot of whole group instruction in those classrooms. They kind of break up and go, okay, let's look at how can I meet the needs of the kids that are in front of me. This year, for the first time, It was not COVID, so we had a little more flexibility, and last year we did have a little bit of fun. We had the ice cream truck come at the very last day to celebrate all the kids' hard work and the accomplishments they had. This year we were able to invite a bubble magician into the program. I set up the week where the reading for every class was a scientific article based on bubble science. So they were then learning about how bubbles are formed and things like that, and writing about bubbles. And then, of course, we culminated that week with our guest who came and did bubble magic with the kids, which, of course, they really liked it. And we had a student who was encased in a bubble, which, of course, was the highlight of the actual day. I actually learned a lot of things from him as well, so it was pretty neat and incredible to think you can have a full-time job doing it. So that was, again, a highlight of that particular program this summer that we had. We do partner with Parks and Rec. A lot of you probably know about the playground groups that they run for the kids. So we partner with them. Elmwood does host the grades 2 and 3 playground group. So Focus uses its home base as Elmwood School. We use the 6 air-conditioned classrooms there. And ESY is at Marathon. So we take over Elmwood and use those little nook of the air-conditioned classrooms, but Parks and Rec is in the gymnasium, so some of the kids then just exit our program and go directly to Parks and Rec there, which is a huge plus for us. And this will then kind of lead me into the Glow and Grow. And when we're thinking about the Grow, from a parent's perspective, it's such a short program, and if they're in the younger grades playground group, it's at a different site. So then the parents have to pick up from Elmwood, from Focus, to then bring their child to playground group, if you will. And that was definitely feedback I got from families that was kind of challenging. And of course, of all summers, and it was at Hopkins, playground group for those kids across town, and with the construction this summer, of course, didn't kind of interrupt their day to travel, which was, again, something that we were thinking about. But overall, just want to check and make sure I cover everything that we wanted to say. I think that the best part of the program in terms of our Glow is the staff to student ratio. This year we had, I'm not a mathematician, so I cannot tell you the growth exponentially of how many interns we had, but last year I had 1 high school intern in our program with a couple of volunteers, and this year we had 9 high school interns with also 1 volunteer who. And again, that just really made a huge impact on the work we were doing with kids, and even on the social end of it. These kids were feeling connected with the high schoolers. The high schoolers were telling them, yeah, I want to be here. And for these kids, it was like, this is really fun, right? Like, this is great. Like, it didn't feel like summer school, if you will, which we don't call it that with them, but they were excited to be there because these high schoolers were there too, helping them learn, playing with them outside and inside. And there really were connections made. There were a lot of nicknames for our interns, and I had to learn all of those. That's what the kids were, and they were all very kind. But they really connected with the interns, and I think that made a huge difference this summer for us. And like I said, having 2 teachers in a classroom where kids are getting small group instruction for the entire time, it really, behaviors kind of course, go down because they're getting more interaction with teachers, and they can focus on the tasks at hand. So in terms of our Grow, like I said, one of the things we want to talk with Parks and Rec more about is thinking about those transitions and how we can better facilitate some of that to keep kids for the whole day, to make it easier for families, as well as work on the consistency of attendance. There were some people who see this as it's grant funded, so it's free. So when you don't feel like going, it's mom or dad isn't saying like, well, I paid for that, you better go. It's like, oh yeah, you're right. So that we definitely had a little pocket of that, it was like, oh, they're not here. Yeah, they need to be here. And we that's a slot, and we only take and have so many invitations, and it's like, oh, that slot is important. There were less of that than the kids who did come, but again, that's something I'd like to shore up and maybe think about ways to encourage parents to understand the immediacy and urgency of this program and why it's important that the kids come each day. So we do a parent survey, family survey at the end of the session, and this was one of the quotes that one of the parents said. The small group setting was very beneficial. Although he was not looking forward to summer school, he actually enjoyed it. His exact words were, "I don't know how they do it, but the teachers actually make learning fun." So,
Total mistake.
and it is funny when you hear the kids, and I will say the kids do really enjoy it, and I think just because it's really short, before they even blink, it's like, oh, it's time to go home, and they're like, what? We're going home. And then on the Thursdays, it's like, see you next week. And they would be, what? No, we can come tomorrow. I'm like, no, we can't. But yeah, the kids really get a lot out of it, and I think it was pretty successful this summer.
That's great.
Jen, do you want to talk about ESOL?
I would love to. So my name is Jen Suker. I probably have the longest title in the district. I'm the Director of English Language Acquisition, Equity, and Access, and I served as the Director of the ESOL Summer Academy. And I also want to thank Shelley Moran, who is our Math Director, who assisted in some of the curriculum and the resources for ESOL Summer Academy. Just like Focus, ESOL Summer Academy, and I apologize, ESOL stands for English for Speakers of Other Languages, and you'll hear me use an acronym L, which is English Learner, or the state often uses the term Multilingual Learner as well. So the ESOL Summer Academy was for Ls entering grades 1 through 6, just like Focus. In fact, some of our students attended 3 weeks of Focus, and then we had 1 week overlap, so then 2 weeks of ESOL Academy, which was really great. ESOL Academy ran August 1st through 11th from 9 to 12:30, again at Hopkins School. So it was 8 sessions over the course of those 2 weeks. The focus this particular summer was on the language of math, and of course English language acquisition. One new thing was we expanded, so we ran 5 mornings the previous summer and increased it to 8 based on family and student feedback from the previous year. So that was pretty neat. We had an enrollment of 45 students this year, again spanning grades 1 through 6. Not all English learners were invited to this program in those grade levels. We targeted students who had lower proficiency levels on our standardized test access for ELS 2.0, but we also looked at other data, some of the same data that Deb was talking about in terms of reading, and went by teacher recommendation. And in terms of like a reason why did we have ESOL Academy, much of it was to reinforce some of that math curriculum from the previous school year. So there were no new standards taught, but from the previous grade level, just to give our students sort of a leg up with this new school year, and also to give them opportunities to engage with English language. Many of our students are speaking their home language all summer, which is amazingly wonderful. But again, just to give them an opportunity to practice both social English and academic English. Just to geek out for a second, like BICS and CALP, so we want to make sure the students are maintaining and building their basic interpersonal communication skills, and also working on their cognitive and academic language proficiency at all times. So in terms of how each day went, very similar to a typical elementary classroom, where we would have a teacher would start off with a morning meeting, and there was often an essential question, and that question would be math themed of some sort, and there would be a variety of activities, readings, word problems related to that essential question throughout the day. And at the end of the day, the 12:30 time slot, students would be journaling and possibly have a different response to how they had responded to the essential question in the morning meeting. We also had recreation and outside play when weather permitted. The students engaged in a lot of math practice, things like fact fluency, word problems. They did escape rooms, had to break codes. The teachers every day had some sort of interactive read aloud, and it was really neat. I was able to purchase books for the program that involved math at an appropriate grade level and literacy, and tied in different cultures. I couldn't believe what actually Shelley and I were able to find. And each grade level had project-based learning. So for all 8 days, the students worked on a project that culminated on that 8th day. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. But it was important to me that the students had an opportunity to collaborate, again, to use language with one another and to work together on these projects. Many of them also involved art. So getting to that point, I have some pictures of some projects that the students made on this slide. And I'll just try to run through quickly what each grade level did for their sort of culminating project. Grade 1 was charged with building a pizza restaurant. So they read texts about pizza just to build some schema in the students. They engaged with math throughout this, whether they were counting toppings, devising a menu with prices. They created a recipe book that involved quantities of ingredients. And they even built out of cardboard a brick oven. And they had to estimate how many bricks it would take to cover the brick oven. And even took some melted crayons and cooked their pizzas. The really neat thing too was one of the students from Beirut, his grandfather owned a pizza restaurant named the Flying Pizza Shop, so that is what they named theirs. Our second graders created an ice cream stand, and at that point we knew that Miss Moriarty was going to be generous enough to send over the ice cream truck to our program. So ice cream was a big theme. So our second graders created a menu with the prices for the ice cream, the different flavors, how many scoops, cones, cups, toppings. They used play money, they had a cash register, they conducted transactions having to give change and so forth, and solved a lot of word problems involving ice cream. Our third graders designed a zoo. So they worked in small groups, and each small group was charged with designing some sort of exhibit. So they were given an allotment of money, and they had to purchase animals, what they could afford. And not only did they have to purchase animals, they had to draft on large graph grid paper the habitat for the animals, depending on, deciding how much space they needed, depending on how many and what size animals they purchased. In addition to that, they had to create the schedule for the zookeeper, so all involving math and presenting that. Our fourth graders were given the option. They could build a water park, a zoo, or some sort of national park, and they were given poster board and model magic. So it sounded very crafty and fun, but they also had to include number lines with fractional parts. And they were given specific directives, and also were able to create sort of their own legend or key. So for example, a student might say, well, in every fourth interval, I'm going to put a tree. And in every eighth interval, I'm going to put a rock, or something like this, or a pool. And then they were able to tour each their peers' parks or zoos or whatever it was that they made, and locate on their partners or the equivalent fractions. And lastly, our grades 5-6 group was combined, and they created an ice cream truck and an ice cream business. So they used 5th and 6th grade, or rather 4th and 5th grade math standards, and made a business plan. And in that business plan, they had to determine inventory, stock. They had to price items, calculate profits, and also deal with selling and making change. So it was pretty neat. So you can see some of those projects right there. In terms of GLOW and GROW for ESOL Summer Academy, just like it says here, a GLOW is certainly, again, re-engaging with English before returning to school, both socially and academically. These culminating projects were really a wonderful opportunity for students to use math, use English language, and build their skills. And again, the time with the language in math, because for a lot of multilingual students, it's not the computation itself, but sometimes the English words that can trip them up, and the word problems and so forth. And areas of growth, we did have an enrollment decline from 21 to 22. So we had about 70 students, again, entering grades 1 through 6 in 21, and only 45 in 22. From talking with families and getting the feedback from the invitations, I think there were a couple of reasons for it. We had pushed up the program 2 weeks earlier in August, and it was starting August 1st. I think a lot of families were still on vacations and still kind of in that mode, and a lot of them told me that. And then the other issue was, I think, or not issue, but being, I don't want to say post-COVID, but further through COVID, where families were back to traveling and back to signing their kids up for camps and less worried about who their kids were intermixing with. I think we had a lot of competing forces. And just some other things, just a variety of focus areas. In 21, we had an Olympics theme, and 22 math, and just always looking for more ideas. I think it's fun to have the focus around a theme. And then measuring student progress. Assistant Superintendent LeBron and I were talking about ways to look in the future of measuring student progress, maybe literacy skills, before we start the program and after the program. So we talked about a few different tools. Definitely interested in that. And like with Focus, I did a parent survey that went out in 6 languages. And this one came back in English, so I'll read it in English. This parent said, "Thank you so much for having this kind of program. I think it is very helpful for all the kids that need to continue learning the English language. He was very happy, and we really appreciate all your effort to give the kids these opportunities to keep learning." This is really nice. Thank you. Thank you. And Jordan, your turn.
Thanks, Jen. Hi, everyone. My name is Jordan Lavender. It's nice to be with you tonight to share about all the work that our kids and staff were doing the middle school and high school for our Summer Tutoring Academy. When I'm not directing the Summer Tutoring Academy, I'm a Spanish teacher at the high school and also the class advisor to the class of 2026, the freshmen. So we had a great group of staff, 8 teachers, all except for one who are current HBS faculty. And also we had a group of high school interns helping us with the middle school program. Like our other programs, our program was more of a sprint than a marathon in terms of every day. We started at 8:30 and ended at 10:45. And dealing with teenagers in the summer at 8:30, that was probably, that's probably what we needed to do. So we had 72 students in total between the middle school and high school, roughly even, 2 more students at the high school than at the middle school. And we had 2 sessions each day, like I said, with a 15-minute break in between, which was beneficial. Students were working on improving skills in math and ELA. Our teachers were working on developing the curriculum for English and math, oftentimes supplementing with educational programs to help cater the curriculum. And in English, they were reading a novel and short stories and discussing those themes. And in math, they were doing math stuff. So you can tell I'm not a mathematician, but okay. Students were assessed to join the program based off MCAS and STAR scores, in addition to teacher recommendation, in consultation with the department heads of math and English, who were very helpful in determining who should be invited to join the program. And we had a great ratio size for our classes, which was helpful. No class exceeded 12 students, and many were between 6 and 12 students with 1 teacher per class. So students got a lot of one-on-one instruction to help them improve their skills. At the middle school, we broke the program down by grades, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders together by age group working on skills. And these were to just improve on what is needed for the next, to succeed the next year. In the high school, we broke it down by people who are working on improving skills, and also we have the credit recovery option at the high school for math. So students were broken up that way to sort of to just distinguish what they were primarily working on. And so as you can probably tell, there was a number of different things that we can report as a success. Our teachers overwhelmingly reported that students were able to improve the skills and learn either math or English, what they wanted to work on, and a number of parents sent individual emails of congratulations, I guess you could say, to teachers for their work over the summer and their child finding success and enjoying the summer program, which is always for our teenagers can be kind of a struggle to be motivated to be at school in the summer. So that was always the thing that we were looking for as students learning and improving on the skills they need for the next grade they're going into. And let's see. Obviously, there in terms of students being able to also just continue with school. Sometimes, especially over the last few years, we've had sort of disjointed education. So being able to have that time to continue to learn is always a good thing. In terms of how we can improve, like my colleagues here were mentioning, being a voluntary program, attendance is probably the biggest issue, particularly for curriculum development with our, especially for our English ELA classes. When reading a book, how to design the curriculum, when kids might miss 1 or 2 classes per week, and how to approach that. Should there be expectations, or should we revisit that? We also had discussions about do we want to rethink the structure of the program, maybe making it less 4 weeks instead of 5 weeks and doing 4 days a week, et cetera, et cetera. So those were all conversations that I had with our faculty and staff as we were ending the program. And one teacher made a very beneficial suggestion of working on getting to the root cause of some of the educational skills that we're working on by looking at social emotional learning and really baking that into the curriculum, which fits into the district's goals and at large, and which would be more of figuring out what the root cause is and trying to address that in addition to the skills. I also, in addition, did a parent survey and got a number of helpful feedback from parents. So I'm going to try to read this here. One parent reported that it's great to have this program again this year. I failed to mention this is only our second year of offering this program. It's very flexible and creates a relaxed environment for kids to come during summer vacation, and they didn't complain. That is a success. And that is all that I have about the summer tutoring program. It was a great experience and wonderful to work with our staff, student interns, and obviously the kids themselves. And I'm going to pass it back to Jeff.
Thank you, Jordan. I just want to touch on a couple through lines of things that you probably heard. And first of all, to Deb, Jen, and Jordan, thank you so much, not only for being here tonight, but for your leadership, both leading up to and throughout the program. The success of this was in large part due to what laid on your shoulders, so I thank you for that. Looking ahead, we're thinking about a few things as we consider programming moving ahead. The first one is obviously funding. You heard the professionals say that these are all grant-funded opportunities. So thinking about funding is something top of mind. In addition to that, we're thinking about how do we progress monitor the impact of what we're doing. Our attendance is something because when it is a drop-in session, it's hard to plan. And when it's hard to plan and you're not able to plan with fidelity, you struggle with maximizing the time of learning that we have available. We want to continue to increase our capacity and access while also enhancing any efficiencies that we can and minimizing the impact that we have across the district, because in addition to us carrying out summer programming, we know that happens at the same time that there may be 1 or 2 custodians trying to get their buildings turned over, or 1 or 2 building leaders who's trying, speaking as a former building leader who hosted summer programming, there might be certain things that I'm trying to do at the same time. So with that, I do want to, on behalf of all 3 programs, offer a few accolades and thank yous. First of all, to the building administrators, the principals and assistant principals that served as hosts to our programs. We are indebted to them for their hospitality and their flexibility. To their office staffs, who are often the front lines of defense during the school year, that was the same case leading up to and then coming off of our summer programming. And of course our custodial teams, who could not have been more accommodating during what is often their time to catch their breath. But instead met the moment and did so much to help us. In particular, the Elmwood Hopkins middle school and high school sites where we hosted our summer programming. A great big thanks to the Parks and Rec Department, who served as a partner for the Focus program. And a quick plug, this might look a little on the nose, but a great thanks to the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education and their after-school, out-of-school time grant, which helped support our programming this summer. There may or may not be an application sitting in them right now, authored by yours truly. I want to thank Mass Hires, which is the organization that we partner with to provide that internship opportunity that not only happens during the summer, but also during the school year as well. Our curriculum and program directors, both those here tonight as well as those otherwise mentioned, who helped with the authorship and the vetting of what we did. And of course, the site coordinators, the teachers, the support professionals, and all of the interns who assisted in what we were doing. I also want to give a great big thanks to my predecessor, Jen Parson, who did so much to coordinate this in both for this year. She really gave me a nice serving on a silver platter to walk into, but she did so much in the year prior too. So great thanks to Jen. I told her I owe her something at some point for that. So, and so with that's what we have to share, and we'd be happy to field any questions that you might have.
Great, thank you.
Want to go?
Yep.
Start this.
I'm glad that you're here. My daughter was in the Focus program last summer, and she is often a difficult child to please, but she loved every single second. Like, she made her brother seem jealous of going to school in the morning. So I want to thank you for, I know these kids this year had the same experience, and it was wonderful, and I credit it to her thriving now in 2nd grade. I'm sure that the boost she got definitely is a credit to how well she can read now and all the things she's able to do. So I'm so happy to see this program grow and help more kids. So thank you, all of you. And this is a great presentation. I appreciate that you all put it together for us.
Yeah, I was going to comment on that too. I mean, hearing about all of this is great. You know, I don't know. I mean, it's just nice to kind of get a summary of what goes on over the summer. And everyone knows no one's sitting home relaxing, really, over the summer. There's like a minute where that happens when the school ends, and then you come right back. But it's also, there's so many, it seems like there's a lot of students. I mean, there's many hundred students who are served by the programs that you reviewed for us tonight, which is fantastic. And I guess my favorite part is at the end where, you know, every one of you had a quote where it was like, it wasn't that bad, right? Like, it wasn't terrible. We actually had fun, weird, you know? So, but that is, as Holly said, that's a huge testament to what you were able to accomplish with your staff and how, you know, the tone you set for each of your programs. And so I think it's great, and I hope that the grants come through for it to continue this year. And, you know, if not, we'll have to figure something out because you got to keep them going, right? Yeah.
Agreed.
So I echo what everyone said. When I was younger, I was part of the Summer Bridge program as an intern, as a student. And so for me, that's one of my most cherished memories from when I was younger. So the fact that all of these students got to intern and experience a very similar sort of situation is amazing. I'm super psyched for them. I think it presents amazing opportunities for those students. As well as the students coming, obviously. I had one question, which is, you know, you were talking about the absenteeism. Did your questionnaires include questions about why there was absenteeism?
Not within my particular questionnaire, but as part of the program. It's just like regular school where we take attendance, and if a child is not present, we call.
Okay.
So there was the reporting each day as to, well, why aren't they here?
Okay.
You know, and we do ask that they be proactive if the child is not coming, to reach out to us first.
Right.
And people did. Sometimes they forgot because it was, you know, oh, I forgot it's like real school. I'm like, yeah, it is. So we didn't actually ask in the survey, but we did get, you know, through our phone calls and emails, and texts as well, because Jen taught me how to use a texting feature for our multilingual families. We would get, you know, as to why and things like that. So we did hear why, and now it's kind of using that information to think about, okay, so how can we approach this maybe a little differently?
Okay, that's awesome. And then my other question was for Jen.
Sure.
So, being an immigrant, I remember when I was little and my dad would do math in front of me, and he would put the symbols in all kinds of weird places and like put some stuff upside down. So you were saying that the math literacy was not so much symbol, but I was wondering, do you like get that kind of thing where you have to teach kind of flipping the division symbol or putting the plus sign in a different place?
Definitely, right. Like a lot of countries do division completely upside down to how we do it, or they don't use some of the same symbols we use for division again, or multiplication, like, you know. So yes, we do explicitly teach that. But our teachers are pretty familiar with seeing those different ways of showing math, so we're able to show them, okay, but this is how we do it here. So yeah, that's pretty neat.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, I was just curious. Personal experience. Thank you so much. You did a wonderful job.
So love seeing all the information to get a little bit more about what the programs are doing. I love everything that you guys had to show. My one concern was when we're talking about an application being in potentially for a grant, timing wise in terms of our budget, is there a contingency plan in the event that Desi does not smile as brightly on us as we would like them to?
That is a great question, and let me come up with an answer right now.
Sorry.
No, that's good, that's good. It's not lost on me. First of all, without jinxing us, we have a very strong application because of the amazing work that's been done in the past. We're able to leverage that and not only say, we want to replicate this, but we want to do even better. So that's a big thing. At the same time, we are looking at opportunities. We are the lucky recipient and beneficiary of several grant opportunities, and there's certainly ways for us to manage creatively around that. So I think everyone's pretty much in agreement that this is a pretty powerful impact. So we will certainly prioritize making sure that we can do that.
What an amazing opportunity for these kids to get this over the summer to help bridge them to
Absolutely.
the next grade. So thank you all.
I thought of one more fast question. I'm just curious. I mean, the high school students that are getting this opportunity to have the internship too. I think that you mentioned it. Somebody mentioned it. How do they find out about it? I mean, is it something that you publicize in the school? How do the kids go about?
Yeah, I think that whole program is publicized by Evan Bishop, the principal of the high school, and it's emailed out to the students, and then they, have to apply. We actually had a waiting list this year for Focus. I can only speak to my program. Sorry.
Yeah, I think like a general email was sent out to the entire for the older students at the high school, and they were notified to contact at that point Ms. Parson, and fill out the application and that's how it was publicized.
Yeah. And there were so many applicants that we had to turn kids away and say, well, we're going to put you on the waiting list because there was only so many, a need for so many, and there's only so much money, I think, within the pot that Mass Hire will allot to a town and things like that.
That's great. And were they students that it kind of seemed like they wanted to get into education, or was it like a cross section of kids?
I feel like for mine, mine were a cross section of kids. They all really loved kids, and that was so clear. Again, to see those connections when you talk about that with the little people and these older people and the kids, there were seniors who had graduated and they're talking about what college they're going to, and these kids are like, and just listening to that and seeing those kind of communications and kind of building within, and then these other kids trying to explain the makeup of high school, and no, I'm a junior, and what does that mean? And some of these kids who don't have older siblings, it became this entire okay, what grade is that? We can put it into a number. So, so it was. I think it was well sent out, and a lot of kids heard about it. Like I said, and we had more than enough applicants.
Great.
And it really became a key to my program.
I love that that's such a benefit to both the older kids and the younger kids to have that. So.
I think for a lot of the older kids too, it was just short and sweet, and I know a lot of them even had other jobs, because they were done by 11 o'clock in the morning, and they could have an evening job or do something like that, and a lot of them were telling me. One girl was on a softball team, I know that, but she was still able to balance it, and so I think it just became like a win all around.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, it really was.
And I think I failed to mention when I was presenting, we had 7 high school interns at East Hall Academy. So that was a generous number too. And most of them came from sort of multicultural backgrounds. Some of them were able to use their language with the students too. So that was precious, with the young students, I should say. Yeah.
And we had 6 high schoolers helping at the middle school, if I didn't mention that earlier.
That's great.
That's great.
That's really great.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank
Appreciate
you so
it.
much.
Thanks.
It's fabulous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too. So then that moves us into the superintendent's report.
So this is the superintendent's report for October 13th, 2022. I will not have anything as delightful as what we just saw. I have an explanation of transportation, where we are with that today, as well as an ESBC2 update. So transportation, I know that when school begins, parents are looking at bus routes and they're thinking, oh my gosh, they're very lengthy. What time will my child get on the bus? When will they get to school? And I think the very important thing to note is that our transportation department keeps data from the start of school up until I mean, even right now, and the lovely thing is that we have GPS on all of our buses, so we know when a child is picked up, we know when kids are dropped off at each one of the buildings, so we can really count how many minutes a child is on the school bus. So what has recently happened on October 3rd is that we just readjusted all of the bus routes. And so I'll start with the middle school, high school routes. And we typically do this every year, and we wait till October 3rd because you have a very good sense of, are we picking up kids a little bit earlier than we thought, a little bit later than we thought, but we've figured out like where there are pockets of traffic, what routes took a little longer than we thought, what routes went more quickly than we thought, and the wrinkles are ironed out by October 3rd. So a great big adjustment happened on October 3rd. Right now, on the high school, middle school runs, we have only one bus that has a pickup time before 7 a.m., and that's at 6:57. The average first stop time for high school, middle school is 7:13 a.m., which is great, and you'll see in a minute when they're kind of getting to school. So the average high school, middle school morning bus ride duration is about 25 minutes. So the kids are getting there around 7:40, and I think 7:40 is kind of nice when they've got to be in class with class starting at 8 o'clock. Kind of gives them a little bit of time to unpack, get settled, be social. So just so you can see what these spreadsheets look like, this is one that came from the end of September. And you can see that the original scheduled pickup time was 6:51. And over time, the actual pickup time had moved to 7:35, and the actual drop-off was 7:34. So given this information here, that this route was really only taking 21 minutes, we were able to take that middle school, high school run and push the scheduled pickup time back to 7:13. It's really nice. Kids are getting 20 extra minutes in the morning if they are staying in bed, or a little bit of downtime, or catch up on some homework or whatever. But this is sort of the way it works. And I know when parents are a little bit antsy when they see that 6:51 pickup time, over time that does change, and that's really good for kids. And I think when we look at kind of that average time of being 25 minutes on a bus, that's not terrible for our middle school, high school kids. What you're going to see for our elementary, the time on the bus is probably not quite as good. So number 4 here, our average time on the bus for the Hopkins Marathon route as well as the Elmwood route is 36 minutes, but that's probably due to a lot of factors. I think we obviously have more kids who are riding the elementary buses. They are free and no one's driving a car. And those are kids who just move slower. When they go to get on the bus, they've got all their stuff and they're trying to scan on. There have been a couple of times where I've been at Elmwood, for example, when kids are getting off the bus and they scan on and scan off. Even exiting the bus, it takes a very long time for all those kids to get off because they're scanning and they've got all their gear. And then, of course, by the time we're doing the Hopkins Marathon Elmwood Run, there's more traffic on the roads than there is during the high school one. Nevertheless, the earliest first stop pickup is 7:45, and that's pretty early, you'll see on the next slide. And the average drop-off time at school is 8:41 for 8:55 start. So that's pretty good. When you look at these actual pickup times in this row right here, you can see that 7:45 is our earliest, but these I think are all very reasonable pickup times, and the actual drop-off times are also pretty reasonable. The ones that you're seeing that are things like 8:28 or 8:32, those are the ones that are getting to the Hopkins School first, because they are opening their doors at 8:35 for the kids. 8:25? 35. Sorry. So if there was one that was getting to Hopkins at 8:28, we would be readjusting that, because we're not going to have kids sort of housed in a bus for 7 minutes waiting to get off that bus. All right, so I will transition to our community forum. This week, this past Tuesday, so 2 nights ago on October 11th, we had a really nice community forum. Probably, I don't know, maybe about 20 people in attendance there in person, and then of course it was recorded by HCAM, so we've had a lot of people watch it subsequently. And we also had a forum for our teachers on the same afternoon. And there were a couple of things that were covered in this forum. One with the taking a look at the existing conditions of the Elmwood School. So I'll just walk you through some of what was covered on that day. On this left-hand side over here, you can see a footprint of the main floor, and it will show you the original school. So all of these additional pieces have been added over time. And this is the upper level of the second floor of the Elmwood School. Originally built in 1964, and that was a school that was for grades 4 and 6. Since that time, in 1989, they did a great big addition renovation project. 2 modular classrooms were added in 2004. There were minor ADA upgrades in 2007. There were fiber upgrades and playground upgrades in 2009, a boiler replacement in 2010, roof replacement 2013, and as you'll remember, we added 4 modular classrooms in 2020. Now, I think this is an important slide because even though that building is nearing 60 years old, it's kind of an indication that it has evolved over time, you know, and kind of been meeting our needs. But as you will see on the next slide, it's tired. So the MSBA does require that we do a great big study of the existing building, the one that we are either renovating or replacing. And so even though you can't read any of the things that are up there, these are the notes that our architect designers have made as they go in to analyze the building. Here is another way that they look at the existing conditions, and this kind of judges whether or not the building is ADA compliant. And I think what they tell us is that if you decided to do a renovation, if you were looking at this thing and the renovation was going to cost 30% of the assessed value of the building, you would have to take everything that is out of compliance now and bring it up to compliance, which I think would be probably a big price tag. The one thing that they keep saying about this building that's very interesting is just sort of the leveling. You'll go down 2 steps, down 3 steps, up 4 steps, and they said that that's very rare to see that kind of multi-level thing happening in a building. Here are the existing conditions on the site. You know that this great big yellow line that runs through here is the gas line. It is a 19.3 acre site, and when we think about what that means, right now we have about 97 spots for parking, but according to the zoning, you would need 161 spots. Our play area is about 25,000 square feet. The enrollment demands 65,000 square feet for playgrounds. The asphalt surfaces, if you've been to Elmwood, you know that they are at end of life, and once again, the gas line. So what Perkins Eastman has done for us, which is really quite nice, is they do a little test fit because the MSB wants to see what it would look like if you were putting another school on that site. Now what you're seeing here is not any kind of an architectural drawing that would depict what's actually going there. It just says, what would it look like if you were building a school that would accommodate grades 2, 3, and 4 plopped on this site. So this is the size of the building, and I'm not sure if you can see this, you probably can't. But over here, there is a red dash line, and this is the outline of the existing school. So you get a sense of the available building area and where the current school is. They are very close to each other if kids were to inhabit this building while we were building another building on that site.
Is that the, I'm sorry to interrupt, is that the actual playground right now where that new piece is shown?
This
What's
new
there
piece
right
over there-
now?
Yeah, it's the parking loop.
That's the parking
And
lot.
little
Yes,
fenway.
okay, yep,
Yeah.
I've got the orientation wrong, thank you.
Yeah, a couple of other things that they'll tell us is, you know, right now, you know, our car queue can only hold 38 and our bus queue holds 12, and it kind of does, you know. All right, the second thing we talked about at that particular forum is net zero energy versus net zero ready. And so the top of this drawing, it describes what net zero energy means. And if you take a look at this left-hand side of this configuration, you can see the need for consumption, right? So they've depicted that with a little building with a plug there. If you go to the right-hand side, what that says is we are able to produce enough energy in a given year to fulfill all of those consumption needs. So there's net zero energy. And this is a decision that this community will need to make. And of course, it will need to make it based on, you know, sort of people's values and cash flow and all of those things. But on the left-hand side, you can, below here on the left-hand side, you can see Net Zero Ready. And what Net Zero Ready tells us is that what you're trying to do is build a building for super efficiency. So the way you position it, you'll maximize, solar opportunities. The materials you use will, maximize the efficiency of, all of your fuel and electrical needs. But you haven't plugged in yet. So you're not technically net zero energy, you're just net zero ready. And so at some time in the future, if you had enough money or the inclination, you would be able to move toward that plug-in, so to speak.
And the MSBA encourages this, right?
You can't do a project without this kind of conversation.
Yeah.
This is just an interesting piece. So if you wanted to look at the EUI right now for the Elmwood School, present, and then look to see what's projected. And the EUI refers to energy use intensity, which really means that you take your electric and either your gas or oil needs, and you divide that by square footage. So right now what you see over here, this number 69, is the what Elmwood is actually at this moment in time. And when you build a new building, sort of this is your target to be somewhere between 25 and 30. So that's very good news for us, I think, in terms of energy requirements.
One question. How is, and you may not have the answer today.
Well, I brought my experts, so.
But, no. It's actually a cost question, right? Like, right now, you're heating a building of 2 floors with, too many kids in it for only 2 grades. And it's got the 69. So, like, if you go to, let's say, 2 grades in a new building, how much are we saving in utilities, in the course of a year, just from that difference? And I know you probably don't have the numbers right now, but.
Well, you wouldn't have the numbers until you had the actual cost for your gas and your electric rates, but just being able to drop basically in half your usage of both oil, gas and electric, you can just imagine what that would do from a budget perspective.
Yeah, that's really nice. Thank you.
Good, okay. And that's all I have for you.
I just have a quick question. Is the target 25 to 30, is that a new MSBA target, or is that just a new target? Has it been in place for a while, the 25 to 30?
They described it as realistic.
Yeah, so 20 to 30 is a pretty intense target.
Okay.
I don't think the MSBA actually gives you a number.
Okay.
So they're looking for you to build, with all of this sustainability in mind.
Okay.
So typically you'll see that a target would be 30 or below. And again, between 20 and 30 is aggressive.
Aggressive, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So, I'm sorry I missed this. Can you go back to the Elmwood Fit? I just want to address this because I know a lot of people talk about why can't we use the current space. And if you look at that, what you're seeing is the entirety of the asphalt area as well as the Little Fenway area would now be construction for a new school. So there would be a lot of hazards for the children to be outside at all during the time period that building's being built. Plus there's, whatever happens in the air when you're doing construction, the kids would be right next to it. So while we've done the test fit on the site, I think if you really start to think about it, you either have to move the kids to a new site, which we don't really have a new site available, or we subject the kids who are at Elmwood to all of that construction stuff happening at the same time they're trying to learn. And it seems like a very poor environment for their children.
And if my memory serves me correctly from Marathon, for some children that would be their entire Elmwood experience.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Their entire Elmwood experience would be construction out there. So I think that's something to really take into account when we're thinking, can we use the Elmwood area?
Leah, I would say there's probably a lot of factors that would go into that. Busing, parent drop-off, pickup, construction vehicles. I think if this was a chosen site, there'd be a lot of logistical things that we would have to work through to try to make it work. And I think it would be difficult.
Yeah. And your point is a good one, because even at the forum, a member of the community stood up and asked about, can we make this happen? Can we just build it on this site? This is where the school is. Let's keep the school here. And, you know, it was a very well-intentioned question. You know, he was like, this makes sense. But I think it's important, your point, well, all of your points are very important, because I think the community has to sort of hear this and then make the call, because yeah, that is where the school is, and it may be sort of on paper for a second makes sense, but there's a lot of factors that need to be considered when you're gonna make that final decision about where it's gonna go. And for sure, going to school for your second and third grade year, watching the bulldozers instead of watching your math teacher is gonna be one of those factors for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think ESBC2 will take all of that into consideration
For sure,
as we're
yeah.
putting for these properties with the help of our architects, Perkins, Eastman, and our OPM, Vertex Compass.
I thought the forum was excellent. I love that you put it like a little recap here. In looking at this, just this alone, it's hard to imagine that that site is going to be able to address some of the very large constraints of the existing school, namely the buses queuing and the traffic, which anybody who drives down Elm Street during drop off and pick up, it is pretty congested.
Yes. One of the things we've said recently is that, you know, if you think about Hopkins, you can pull all of that traffic off the road because you've got that extensive driveway and loop road. The middle school we've pretty much figured out. Like if you are on Hayden Row in the morning now, you don't get middle school backup traffic. And the same is true for Marathon. Mrs. DeVoe has rearranged the way parents and buses queue up there. We still have a high school problem, but I would say that if we had to rank our traffic and build up problems, Elmwood is probably the worst.
It seems like, and I don't have a child there, but I do cut through that way up Elm Street sometimes to get around the other traffic, but making the mistake of not realizing how much is actually backed up and how much time you sit trying to get through that.
I do have a child there, and I will say it's not fun. I'll be really nice about it.
Yes, if in theory you need car queuing for 38, you're not getting it.
Yeah.
And essentially, the queuing happens in a parking lot.
Yeah.
You know,
And
so when
it's
the
a
cars are
small
queued,
street.
people can't get out.
Yeah.
So if you work there and put your car there, you will wait until everybody's picked up their child to be able to leave.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you get blocked in. Like if you go there at the end of the day to like read to your kid, you're waiting till everybody's gone to leave, unless you're very quick, which.
And one last comment is, this is for 2 grades, right? So when you think about 3 grades, then the play space needs grow, and it can't situate those needs, right?
What
'Cause the
Perkins Eastman
65
has told us is that 2 grades on that site is probably about all it can accommodate.
Yeah.
Unless you are able to secure other land.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd be interested too, like as they're working on parts of the school where kids can't be, are we gonna be moving kids all around the school too to make, cause we're already like kind of over capacity. So these kids would be like traveling throughout the school to be able to be there while there's construction going on in parts of the buildings. Like it just seems like, you know what I'm saying? Like you're gonna be blocking off. And I think that would be
So I
probably
would say
pretty
if
trying.
If the town decides to go down the route of renovating the current building,
Yeah.
yes, there will be a lot of
Yeah,
phasing
you'll have like
and figuring out
over,
placement of
right.
kids, and do we bring in temporary classrooms to accommodate that?
Yeah.
Where do we put the temporary classrooms? These are honestly all things that the committee
Yes.
is gonna work out and make their recommendations to the school committee, you know, when the appropriate time comes. So they'll do, they're gonna do traffic counts and traffic studies at the locations that we, you know, that we kind of get down to, however many locations that we decide are serious to look at. And they'll try to help us figure out, you know, the best placement of the school, and ultimately, through you guys and through the community, that decision will get made. I think, you know, we're gonna find that renovating an Elmwood school is tough because it's a, you know, 60-year-old building, and trying to get it up to today's standards of building is would be a task in itself. So, but they're all things that we need to look at through the MSBA process, and, you know, just our own due diligence to make sure that we're presenting the right thing to the community and to you guys to make, you know, a great decision on what a new Elmwood school would look like.
I appreciate all the, like, this type of diagram, like, for people, like, that need to see it, like me, like, this is very helpful, and I appreciate all of these different ways that you're looking at it and presenting the information, so thank you very much.
Yeah, we very much, I think, through the committee, we don't want to do anything in a vacuum. We want as much community input as we can, which is why we're putting on those forums, trying to get people out, doing hybrid meetings, you know, so people that really have the opportunity to ask questions and understand the process as we understand it.
Yeah, thank you.
Go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say, I love that there are also forums being done at the same time with staff, faculty and staff.
Yes. I was just going to add, I know I was praising Perkins Eastman a couple meetings ago because they really do. They're very forward thinking. And so your question about parking and playground space and things like that, all of the sites that are under consideration, they've really tried to figure out, like, how long could the queue be? How many buses can we fit in here? How many parking spaces do we have? If this is a 2-grade school, we can accommodate this. If this is a 3-grade school, we're going to have to rework the road in order to accommodate this. So they're already, for all of the sites, they're really thinking about that. And the playground space is a big deal because Elmwood's playground space is really insufficient right now for those kids. So I think making sure that there's a place where the kids can go. You know, missing 2 years of recess is a big deal.
Oh, yeah.
A huge deal. Yeah.
And I think it's, like you were saying, it's just really cool to listen to them. They're like, okay, here's the grading over here. And even though there's, you know, whatever space, if
They'll
we were
have to walk
actually
up a
to
hill.
build here, they'd have to walk up a 40-degree hill. And, you know, how would that affect, like,
they're really thinking about every site very, very analytically and in ways that I don't even know how their brain got there, but you know, clearly they're experts.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Great. Okay.
All right.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And then is that it?
That was
Okay, I
yes.
did not want to cut you off. Thank you. So that brings us into the school committee chair report, and payroll warrant S23007 is approved. Warrants 23014, 23015, and 23016 have been approved, all in the package. The other thing I wanted just to kind of circle back from our discussion that we had when we were at our workshop, just an event that is coming up is two. One is the next ESBC forum, which is on November 2nd, and the other is the Veterans Day celebration is going to be at the Senior Center on Friday the 11th at 11. I am planning to go, and I want to make sure people were aware of it.
I may actually be able to make that because it's my off Friday, I think.
Nice. Very nice.
Thank you.
How about liaison reports?
Yeah, so I missed the public forum because I was at the Youth Commission.
Dr. Kavanaugh stole our report.
I know. But so Youth Commission, they're doing a very interesting thing of trying to figure out how to turn, Martin Luther King Day is traditionally their thing, and usually they do like a volunteer event that day. But they're trying to figure out how do they turn that opportunity into more of a long-term volunteer opportunity. Like how do they present opportunities to people so maybe they can volunteer throughout the year. So they're having a lot of great discussions on that. I also, as the school committee liaison, told them about the next two public forums on 11/2 and 11/30. And I asked them if they could help to advertise that because they're so involved with families that it would be nice to get more participation. So that is my report.
They stole it from you.
I wasn't able to go to the forum either because I had the Marathon Fund Committee. It was a great little committee and I love it. And Nancy said I wouldn't, and she was right. But anyway, the only real update is that they're going to be able to offer 6 scholarships this year. each for $1,500, and the application period begins in April at some point. So I'll have more information when those applications are actually out. And they also said that they're kind of blind applications, and they're no longer asking for gender either, so they're gender neutral applications. So they don't have any identifying information, just like whatever the student wrote about. They said they limited it to 250 words, so it's super easy and accessible for almost anybody within the school that plays a varsity sport to apply.
That's great.
Holly, what is the amount of the?
$1,500, $1,500,
Nice.
yeah. And they're giving out 6 of them.
That's great. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Great.
We don't, our policy subcommittee, our working group, not
We've
really
got
subcommittee. So, yeah, we're trying to set up our next meeting, so we haven't met since we worked on the policies that are on the agenda tonight.
It's okay, you've got
We've got
something for us to look forward to there. The one I had is LPAC is having their first meeting of the year on the 29th. It's going to be on a Saturday with some time for kids to play out on the playground, and families can bring kids along. So that invitation has gone out to all of our LPAC families. That is it for that, and that brings us into the senior, we did that already. My bad. The Business Professionals of America intent to travel, that's item B.
Okay, we've got 4 in a row here. So the first one is Business Professionals of America. Mr. Scott has 24 kids. They will be going to the State Leadership Conference, which is in Norwood, Massachusetts. It's one night overnight, March 4th into March 5th. And we are looking for you to approve that overnight trip.
Okay. Any questions?
That's great.
Is there somebody who feels moved to make a motion?
I will. I move to approve the BPA State Leadership Conference field trip.
Second.
Okay, so motion by Jen, a second by Leah. All those in favor?
Aye.
So that one passes, and then we have the next one.
Okay, the next one is the National Leadership. This is also Mr. Scott and also Business Professionals of America. He has 20 students, and they will be traveling to Anaheim, California from April 26th to April 30th.
And that is over spring break, is that the week?
After.
It's the week after.
The week after, yeah.
So, random question. We had a habit of asking, to make sure that financial support was available and such, just making sure financial support is available, it's accessible to students who might not otherwise be able to spend the money, right?
Oh, I think Mr. Scott's very good about that.
Perfect.
Yes.
Thank you.
Dr. Kavanaugh, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So in that's during an active school week, how do we fund coverage for Mr. Scott? Are we able to do that? Do we have the budget to cover him when he's gone?
Yeah, and the funny thing I think about the high school is that very often we don't get subs for them. The kids are, they just go to the cafeteria and they're given an assignment. But I would imagine that if he's gone for 5 days, we don't want kids away from like robotics or those kinds of things that they're working on. So I could talk to Mr. Bishop about that just to make sure that those kids aren't wandering for a whole week.
We do have a permanent sub at the high school, right?
Yes.
So okay, thank you.
Does that overlap with APs at all?
I think AP started the first week of May.
Okay.
I had asked.
Robert, yes.
I did BPA last year. It does overlap.
Yeah.
Which is
does.
unfortunate, yeah.
Okay. And are you able, how can you work around that? Do you have to
You
choose-
reschedule it in advance. You can only reschedule the days you're missing because I'm sure the national conference is over the weekend, so you don't actually miss all the days. You only miss a couple. But so you reschedule the ones that you're gonna miss. You can't reschedule, like if you come back Sunday night, you can't reschedule an AP exam on Monday.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
That makes, yeah.
Yeah. But a couple people miss the exams, and usually it's a full classroom of makeups going on.
Okay.
So,
As long as they don't have to choose not to.
no, yeah,
to
everyone
take
has
it.
the
That's
opportunity to take it.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
They're actually coming back on a Sunday, it looks like. Oh, no, I'm in the wrong month, I think. Hold on. What,
They come back
Laney's 30th.
April 30th.
it
which
is a Sunday.
Sunday.
Yeah. So we don't know the travel times, do we? I mean, do we know, is
Oh,
the
the
conference
flight
actually
times?
happening, on Sunday?
No, I don't know the flight times.
Okay.
Well, I move to approve the BPA National Leadership Conference from April 26th to 30th, 2023.
Okay.
Second.
So motion by Leah and a second by Jen. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so that is approved. And then it looks like there are a couple more there, robotics related.
Oh, that's sad. You can't be in National Leadership Conference and in Vex World because they overlap.
Yeah.
And how does Mr. Scott
I
distribute his
know,
time?
right?
I mean, it's got to be in 4 different parts of the country on the
All
same
at
day.
once.
Amazing.
Yeah.
He is very innovative.
Yes, he is. I believe he can do it. I have no doubt. Yeah.
Yes, we also have Mrs. Allen.
Okay, there you go.
So there are 18 kids who want to go to the Vex Worlds competition in Dallas, Texas, and that trip is from April 25th to April 28th. And we are looking for you to approve that for the high school kids.
Okay. Any questions?
No.
Okay, move to approve robotics trip to Vex World, April 25 to 28, 2023.
Okay. Motion by Leah, second by Jen. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And then the middle
All right,
school
and
one.
then the very last one. The middle school has 24, roughly, students who will be traveling also to the Vex World competition in Dallas, Texas. Those dates are April 30th to May 4th. That's the return time. And the advisor to that is Mrs. Allen at the middle school.
Okay. Any questions?
Okay, move to approve HMS robotics trip to Vex Worlds, April 30th to May 4th, 2023.
Motion by Leah,
I'll second.
second by Jen.
You're on a
All those
roll.
in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
All right.
Can
that's
I
great.
say how cool this is?
Yeah.
It is
Like,
very cool. It
It
is.
has been so long since there's been like this litany of trips for the students.
Oh, it's great.
And like
is.
diverse opportunities to do
Yeah.
some really cool stuff.
Yeah.
It's really great. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, that brings us into the FY24 capital plan. Mrs. Rothermick? Oh, we'll fill the airtime with something else for a minute.
Little elevator music at this time would be appropriate.
They keep changing the code on you, so this could get interesting over here.
There we go.
Okay, so this is a presentation of the FY24 capital plan. It also involves a little bit of a look at the 10-year capital plan that comes into play. This is, fair to say, a lot of information. And so the goal of tonight is to really kind of look at what is a snapshot of that 10-year plan, just to get an idea of what the planning is in terms of each number of years. But then the focus becomes what the ask will be for fiscal year 24. So, and at the end of this meeting, you will not vote, but you will need to vote for acceptance or whatever at your next meeting. So that's just to kind of tee it up, and I'm going to invite Mr. Person up in case there are questions for him in particular. So just as a reminder, whenever we're doing any type of plan, we're always looking to go back to the district improvement plan. And again, just a reminder, these are these buckets to fill that you have seen in previous presentations. The plan for enrollment growth, meeting every student needs, and building a community of respect and collaboration. So the capital planning, the mission statement, the mission of the maintenance, building, and custodial department is to promote the mission and vision of the district through the comprehensive plan programs allowing maximum utilization of human and financial resources afforded in providing a safe, clean, and environmentally efficient and effective environment. The goals are to ensure the facilities support a high-quality education, ensure equity and access to all students, project the needs assessment based on a facility condition index and repair history, project the needs assessment based on enrollment projections, and create a clear and concise long-term plan that remains as a living document. And again, this is a snapshot, the 5-year look ahead, and this is just a piece of the 10-year plan. And it's broken up into 2 different pieces. These are projects or items that are under $25,000 individually, and these are actually carried in the operating budget. So when we get to the operating discussion, that will be where this will become more in depth. But just for your knowledge, that line item typically is around 200,000. So you can see where we're looking at for some of these things, at least for 24.
So one question, the HVAC district-wide is not less than 25,000, but is it like less than 25,000 a building or something, like
So
averaged out?
that's looking at smaller items like exhaust fans, which may be, 10 exhaust fans at 5,000 each,
Okay.
so they're smaller items.
So it's a roll-up of a bunch of small
Correct.
items. Okay,
Right.
thank you.
And again, this is a snapshot look of the capital items over 25,000, and this is what we'll be discussing this evening. But you can see when you look at the buckets that we also break this into FF&E, furniture, fixture, and equipment. That's where you see the HVAC again, boilers, roof replacements. Then it goes down into a bucket for the buildings in terms of, for example, the Elmwood project, and then down into campus, which is really more of your exterior. And then lastly, technology. So what we'll go through this evening are the following items: a vehicle for maintenance at 70,000, technology at 75,000, an HVAC point-to-point testing of 98,000, an HVAC additional funding at 300,000, an HVAC variable air volume replacement and controls at 157,000, an additional playground for Marathon at 1 million, HVAC district-wide at 1.2 million, the Loop Road paving and sidewalk repair at 1.5 million, the high school track and field 3 at 5.8 million, and a Hopkins School addition at 21 million. Now, what you saw on that previous slide also was the Elmwood School project, but that will be determined later in FY23, probably in December 23, January of 24, before that would come to be.
So is that sort of the 21 million a placeholder for now until we know?
So the
that
21
information?
million is for the Hopkins School, not the Elmwood School.
Yes, but I guess what I was thinking is what happens with the Elmwood School would presumably impact what we're going to do to the Hopkins School.
We'll get into that a little bit more. So the first item, again, the vehicle. So this vehicle represents a replacement of one of the 4 vehicles for the 8 maintenance staff. These vehicles are used for maintenance, towing, plowing, sanding, etc. These vehicles are incurring costly repairs, and this will begin a replacement plan and improve efficiency and effectiveness.
Can I just ask, the 70,000 is for a gas vehicle?
Correct.
Yeah, is there an electric vehicle alternative for the kind of vehicle that we need at this point?
I don't believe there is, and I think because of the way we need to use it, plowing and stuff like that, I'm not sure that electric's quite there
Has the
for us
power.
yet.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
The technology upgrades of 75,000, this is to get at the wireless networks are designed to support the high-intensity classroom environments and large venue events in all the schools' common spaces. The wireless networks are composed of over 400 wireless access points district-wide. This would be to replace those wireless access points. And again, this is a 5-year replacement cycle. And just looking to keep up with the systems and the security. In addition, as we do this, the district is eligible for E-rate reimbursement as a percentage of that cost.
Mr. Rothermere, do you know which schools would be hit in 23 for the, is it like sort of school by school, or, you know, you said it's part of a system-wide upgrade?
This would be to do them all.
Okay. And in the event that we is it possible to break that out into chunks, or is it more effective to do them all at once?
I'm not sure if they're compatible, like, that's really more of a question for Mr. Ghosh.
Yeah.
You know, as to whether you can break this down into smaller chunks, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Energy use, long-term plan. So the energy use intensity, which the EUI you heard a little bit about earlier when we were looking at the Elmwood project. And just one more time, it's an indicator of the energy efficiency of a building's design and or operations. And basically the EUI can be thought of as the miles per gallon rating of a building. So again, it combines all the energy sources and divides them by the square footage of the building. The EUI allows for the building's energy to be compared to other buildings of the same type and set benchmarks. So again, the EUI for new buildings is targeted to be below 30. We worked with the UMass Clean Energy Extension in January of 22 to look at the EUI across all of our buildings, and this is the data that they had put together for us. So you can see that Marathon has ranged in the high 39 for the last couple years, and while it's above 30, you also have to keep in mind that this includes our COVID years where we were running our airflow and all our HVAC systems 24/7 at maximum capacity. So it's higher than the 30, but there's a reason for that. Elmwood, again, has ranged from 55 to 65 in the last couple of years. And again, you heard a little bit about what our designs or our thoughts are with the Elmwood being in the feasibility study with the MSBA. Hopkins has ranged from 76 to 94 in the last 3 years, and we'll be discussing some of the strategies to address this as part of this capital plan. The middle school has ranged 71 to 79, and as you can see where the red star is pointed out by UMass, the middle school will need a more comprehensive plan as it's a more challenging building to address. There are a lot more issues going on with that building. And the high school EUI has ranged from in the 64s over the last 3 years. And again, with this capital plan, we'll be looking at some strategies to address that. Some strategies that have been done in previous years through the operating budget, the capital budget, and the Green Communities grants. We've done LED installations in all the schools, weatherization at the middle and high school, building management system software upgrades at Hopkins and the high school, controls installation. These are some partial installations at the Hopkins middle and high school. HVAC variable frequency drives at Hopkins, and we have done several building audits. Our future strategies include testing the building management system functionality, and that we'll refer to later slides as a point-to-point. Continuing the controls installation, and again, following a responsible replacement cycle and continuing with our building audits. So the first one that comes up is the point-to-point testing for the high school at $98,000. So the point-to-point testing is a retro commissioning of all the HVAC equipment of the high school connected to that building management system. And the goal of the review is to ensure that the building is running at the optimal performance in an effort to reduce that EUI. The HVAC variable air volume replacement and controls at $157,000. This actually was these repairs came as a result of a smaller point-to-point testing that we did for just 2 units at the high school. And these units were identified during one of our building audits, and this was done through the Green Communities Grant. But as a result of testing these, we were identified 12 units that needed to be replaced and controls. So this project, again, will help to increase our performance and decrease the EUI at the high school. HVAC district-wide, the replacement represents large air handling units and rooftop units. For FY24, the proposal is to replace 3 of 9 units at the Hopkins School and 1 of 9 at the high school. And these are end-of-life replacements, and the replacements will increase the building efficiency, again, in an effort to decrease that EUI. Now, we're always asked what happens if you wait and do things in another year. So this is that long-term plan of our larger units. So you can see in fiscal 24, we're looking at 3 of 9 for Hopkins and 1 of 9 at the high school. In 25, we're looking at another 3 of 9 at Hopkins and 2 of 9 at the high school. 26, another 3 of 9 at Hopkins, 3 of 9 at the high school. 27, 2 of 9 at the high school and 2 of 7 at the middle school. In 28, 1 of 9 at the high school, 1 of 7 at the middle school. 29, 1 of 9 at the high school, and 2 of 5 of the boilers at the high school. In 30, 3 of 5 of the boilers for the high school, and 2 of 7 units at the middle school. And in 31, 1 of 7 at the middle school. Each of these units do have a different price point, so there's a strategy as to how we captured which units we were doing in which year. But you can see anytime you delay, it just doubles up on that following year.
What is the life cycle of the units? Like, how long do they tend to last?
Yeah, I think it depends on which unit you're talking about, you know, so I think we put into our program, so we run through all our equipment through School Dude, which helps us develop our capital plan. And I want to say we put boilers at 30 years, most HVAC equipment between 25 and 30 years. But then there's other pieces that would be 10 years, 12 years, so it's kind of all over the map. And then, you know, kind of what we're looking at is the assessed, you know, when we're going through and we're doing our PM service, how much money are we putting into each one?
Right.
So 30 years, maybe 25 years, because that one really runs a lot, or it's taken a lot of abuse, you know. Or it could go a little higher than that. So we're really kind of assessing partly on conditions as well.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Any either anticipated or noticed impacts on our HVAC equipment relative to the different usage they had during COVID, where they were running 24/7 at, you know, maximum capacity for the airflow?
So I think this year we're really seeing some of those repairs come in, and it's kind of smaller stuff, like we're replacing a lot of motors and stuff that we're really kind of winding through those times. So I have noticed an increase this year of our general maintenance on equipment, and obviously want to keep it running, you know, as we still end through the pandemic, but, you know, still have. Well, we always want to keep it running, but but we're still kind of hypersensitive to it to make sure that we're on top of fixing things as quickly as they can when they break.
That's great.
Can I ask one question too? I don't want to. You want to keep going, and then I can
No.
ask it at the end.
No.
So I'm curious. I mean, obviously this stuff needs to be done, but I'm curious. Like some of the, like for example, the point-to-point testing. It needs to be done, but to lay out $100K to test it, I'm wondering, and I wish I thought of this question before now, how that compares, like, to say what we spend in a month on the buildings for energy. Like, are we going to lay out $100K to save $100 a month? And I know that we wouldn't, but I'm just saying, getting some perspective on, you know, why we're laying out a big chunk of money, what kind of savings might we think we're gonna get in return on a more
Yeah.
efficiently running system? Does that
So-
make sense?
So I don't know that we necessarily have a dollar amount, like if we do spend 100,000, are we gonna save 200,000?
Sure, yeah.
Yet, I think there's still some kind of things that we need to run through. Really, what this is gonna help us do is identify weak areas in the system. It's gonna help the building management system be able to correct those. It's gonna put a level of comfort into the building. And it's gonna monitor, am I running this motor too long and this motor not long enough? So it's gonna pick up efficiencies across the board that we may not realize even right away. You know, if I can save 5 years of motor life on this because now I'm switching between them where I might not have been doing that before. And I'm burning this motor up and this one's brand new.
Mm-hmm. And you can't put a price tag necessarily on what's an extra year of life.
Yeah,
hard
I
to-
think
get
it's
that, yeah.
I think it's hard to quantify that.
Right,
you
right.
know, I think we'll realize savings as we kind of go through these programs. But you can see from what Ms. Rothermick has put out already, our EUIs in our buildings are really high. The Hopkins School is off the charts high.
Mhm, yeah.
For a building that's has some age to it, but is not super old. You know, you would expect the high school, you know, a building that's twice the size to have higher EUIs than, you know, than that elementary school. And those are the things that we really need to identify. And we've been working on it with Green Communities and with Prism Energies to try to help us figure out, you know, why is this building using so much? And, you know, I think that's kind of what we're proving out is the equipment is either pulling too much energy or these things are happening, but it's hard to pinpoint exactly what it is.
Unless you study it and figure it out.
Yeah, we have to study it,
right,
figure it
okay.
out, make sure it's all running
Test it.
the way it's supposed to run, and that's kind of what the retro commissioning does. It's what we do in a brand new building when we open it. We commission the building to make sure everything's running optimally, and after 20 years, I think a retro commissioning is kind of worth it.
Makes
you know?
sense, okay.
One of the really simple ways of thinking about it, within a classroom, you would typically have a CO2 control. And so when the CO2 control measures high, it opens the vent, the variable air volume, and lets the air in, so it brings the CO2 back down.
Right, okay.
When you're doing this point to point and you see your CO2 levels going up and down, but your vents are not adjusting, so they're either open full or they're not open at all. So if they're open full and they're constantly blowing air, your EUI is going way up.
Mhm.
So that's just a very small example of
It makes sense though.
what this will do.
Okay.
And that was part of the reason I asked about the life cycle, right? Because we're buying this big piece of equipment, but it'll last us 25 years.
Yeah.
So, and it's going to reduce energy usage for
Mhm.
the life cycle of it. So, you know, what does that
Sure.
mean over 20 years?
Right. It's hard. I get how it's hard to, you know, you're just thinking about how you're spending money to ultimately save money and trying to find the balance
Yeah.
between those two
Yeah.
things and make sure that we're hopefully coming out on the positive end.
Yeah, and I think it's difficult in facilities. We play a lot of catch up, right, all
Sure,
the time because
yeah.
I think it's easy to say let's save this money on this because we can put it towards that. And then when everything breaks at one time and
Yeah,
everybody's
right.
hollering and it's cold or uncomfortable or hot or
Ceilings cave in.
the ceiling's caving in, you know, those are difficult things to then try to catch back up on. And I
Right.
think over the last couple of years, we've done a lot of catching up, but I think we still have a lot more to do, as you can see through this budget.
Gotcha.
Can I ask you, in this era of like soaring energy prices and everything, is it possible that doing this study would give us some data in the event that incentive programs and grants come forward like next year? Or, and we're great at pursuing grant money, but as the state and federal governments get around like energy efficiency and climate and, you know, should money come down, could this be also very useful in making a case for needing grants?
Well, and again, all of our building audits that we've done, we use those to feed into the Green Communities grant.
Yeah.
You need to have that data to apply for a grant.
Yeah.
So because within their studies shows exactly changing this will save X number of kilowatts and MBTUs and anything else, and the Green Communities, the state needs to see that analysis to decide whether or not they're gonna give us the money. So anytime we do, a building audit or a study such as this, it feeds into a grant of any kind.
Yeah, and it's a double-edged sword, it's great that we have them come in and they help us with this money, and then they keep finding our deficiencies, which creates us, causes us to have to spend more money. But they've been a great partner with us through this. I know in my first year here, our grant was for $230,000. I think we've maxed out to where the town can only receive up to $100,000 now. But that's from the work that's been happening right along. So we try to take full advantage of that, as often as we can. We're always applying, so.
Yeah. And I think one last thing is our goal is to meet every student's educational needs. That includes facilities. It includes having a very temperate environment where they're comfortable to do their learning, because it has been shown over and over again that if you're in a cold classroom, if you're in a hot classroom, you're not learning. Your teacher is probably suffering in those situations, very uncomfortable, right? So it's not just about the money, right? This truly affects the student's capability to be comfortable and learn well within the classroom environment. And I think that's something to keep in mind too.
Yeah, and that's why we started out saying that these are part of the district improvement plan and those buckets, because
Right.
it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. The HVAC additional funding of $300,000. In May of '22, at town meeting, there was a request to replace one high school unit and 2 middle school air handling units that control, for the middle school, the auditorium. This additional funding would add cooling to the auditorium. So this is just really focusing on the middle school units. However, we do have some information, late-breaking information. We received the bid for the high school unit, and again, this was $475,000 in hopes of doing 3 units. The cost of doing the one high school unit, based on the bid, which will be brought to you at your next meeting, will not leave us enough money, even with this additional funding, to do 2 units at the middle school. So we're working with our engineer to figure out what we could do to still address a unit at the middle school with that funding. So this may not survive this request, but that's just kind of putting that out there for you.
This has been on the list for a long time, right?
Yes.
I mean, like a decade, maybe?
Well, so what happened, and this is actually before my time, there was a study that was done on the middle school air handlers and to retro commission them. It was all part of a middle school auditorium upgrade. So they did other things, lighting, etc., as part of that middle school upgrade, but they did not have sufficient money to address the air. So the discussion that happened several years ago before our time went away because there was no longer funding for that. So you're right, it has been a discussion. This is the first time that it would have come back for funding, but we're still not going to have enough money.
We should totally have town meeting in June again.
I know.
The
July. If we do July, we will get
that money.
So, dumb question, but on a residential level, a lot of people are looking at heat pumps, that technology. I have no idea what this commercial technology is like, but is it at all akin to that in terms of energy efficiency? I know we put in heat pumps that really paid off. So I just was curious if we've looked at that kind of, or is this that kind of thing?
Yeah, so we're working with McRitchie Engineering, and so when we kind of pose this to them, we're looking for the most energy efficient equipment that we can. That's part of our goal for them and their goal for us. That still falls within a budget that we set forth. So heat pumps, and I don't know if I have the capacity to explain like how it would work here, but I don't believe it's something that would work in this situation, in like the middle school AHU replacements. We do use them in some other areas though, when we do kind of smaller mini splits, and you know, so we have a heat pump in those units and stuff. So we look at all options and really kind of rely on their expertise to help us figure out what fits best and how will work best to heat and cool that space. And they've been great partners to work with over the last, you know, year or so that we've been, couple years that we've been doing work with them. And I know they've done work in the district.
And their charge is to do the energy efficiency piece of it.
Yeah.
They're the engineering firm who designed the boilers for the middle school that we are completing. And instead of the replacement of 2 boilers, they recommended the 3, which was much more efficient and a lot of, so, you know, they really are the experts in terms of what can we do with this building to make it as efficient as possible.
That's great. I ask for myself. I also ask as the liaison to the Sustainable Green Committee. They may ask me, so just want to thank you. I appreciate it.
Loop road paving and sidewalk repair. So there is approximately 1.5 miles of the loop road to be repaved, and the sidewalks along the road would also be repaired. So the first photo here, those are your sidewalks, and you can see the condition of the road. So I think anyone who has driven down there will understand that need. The Marathon Playground for $1 million. Again, as a reminder, the Marathon School was built with a planned enrollment of 395 students, which would have meant that the design for the playground was also for that planned enrollment. The current enrollment is over 592 students, so obviously the existing playground is not able to accommodate the increased enrollment, and this has created an equity and access issue for all students. And a Community Preservation Act funding application has been submitted for this project.
Could you just remind me anyway, what sort of recess spaces are available to students at Marathon? Because we have 2 playgrounds, I believe. And then is there any other green space, grass space, field space, whatever, to play?
Yes.
There is. So there is a playground for the preschool students, and then there is a playground for the other 592 students. Then there is a grass field. So if you speak with Ms. DeBow in terms of recess, I think she says they have 42 recess sections a week or a day.
I don't know. It's
significant. So they have spaces broken out within the grass field where students can be and at what time, and there's a whole rotation for the kids.
So when you talk equity and access, I was trying to understand in my own mind how that value that we have applies to recess, and it's students not equally being able to be scheduled in to playground time for their recess slot.
Right.
Yeah, I think Mrs. DeBow does a great job trying to rotate them through, but they're playing at the playground on the field, and then some of the I don't want to say access road, but the paved areas right around by the access road. She set up some things, and I think she rotates the children through each kind of play area, which has to be a scheduling nightmare, I'm sure, on her part with that many children. But if you go out to that playground, you'll see even with that rotation, there's kids waiting in line to get on a slide or get on a swing or get on which, you know, isn't such a bad thing to have to wait sometimes, but they're long lines, and recess isn't such a long period of time, you know, so I think getting to get the most action out of them kind of helps their day, you know.
And this would be built separate, or would we expand an existing playground, or would we build something separately on the grass area?
It would be on the grass area.
Okay.
So one more question, the funding application, is that for the full amount, or is this the amount that's left over once the application goes in and we get X amount of money?
So the application for the playground is for the full amount.
Okay.
But the applications were due today, which is why this is all kind of coming at the same time. So the applications were due today, then they will go through, the Community Preservation Committee will go through their process, and then probably also have hearings to go through the application
So it'll be a
and
few
all these
months
things.
before we hear anything.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's legalities as to what is fundable using the CPA funds. Playground should fully qualify. When we get to further on, you'll see that some of the other stuff won't fully qualify.
Okay,
So.
thank you very much.
Yep. So the Hopkinton athletic fields, this is really looking at long-term planning. Feasibility study was conducted by Gale Associates to look at the condition and options for all the athletic fields. And the study was used to create a long-term vision to address condition, equity, and access as well. And Leah, for your reference, I know you had a question about location. So this is the middle school building here. And this is your high school building. All of the fields are out in back.
Okay.
Okay, just to give you a reference point, with the exception of the existing tennis courts, which are up here in
Right.
front of the middle school.
Okay, thank you very
Hopefully
much.
that's helpful.
Did Gail do the study this year?
Yes.
Okay.
So pulling together the data in terms of our athletes, the fall has 670 athletes, winter 420, and spring 591. Total of 1,681 athletes participated in 21. In terms of teams, you can see we have fall 27 teams, winter 21, and spring 20, for a total of 69 teams.
There's one team missing there.
Wasn't this a year that a couple of teams didn't run?
Some teams didn't run.
I believe this was pandemic era.
Still in 21.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
these are probably low.
Could be.
Yeah.
So minor correction on the map there, it's 68.
Sorry. Oh, did I add wrong? I did. Good catch. I thought you said we're.
I was like, there's some.
It's like, wow, we're missing a team. Good call. I don't know how you figured that out.
That's what I was thinking too.
That's my
I was
error. Thank you.
impressed. She's like, is it winter, spring, or fall? Which one's winter?
And what's the sport?
Amanda and I were completely
Right.
like, well, of course.
It was pandemic. They're all missing.
Okay, so running through the fields, field 1 and 2. The current use, football, 4 teams use it for practice, 3 teams use it for games. It's used for cross-country, soccer practice, track and field events, and baseball, 4 teams practice and sub-varsity play games.
So this is right behind the middle school?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So option 1 was looking at just doing a turf on the infield of field 2, which would be about 500,000. Option 2 was one large turf field, which we didn't take that one too much further, so we don't have the cost on what that would be.
Can I interrupt for 1 second? Which field is field 2? That's not the existing.
Field 2 is the existing
It is.
varsity baseball field.
But the
Field
baseball,
1
okay.
is the 8th grade junior varsity football field right behind the middle school.
Field 3, the current use, football has 150 athletes. Field 3 is reserved for varsity football games only, so it is only used 3 or 4 times a year. And all the TVL football games are on turf, except for one school. Track, there are 150 athletes, cross-country, 100 athletes. And in terms of seating, there are 500 seats for the home and 300 seats for the visitors. So looking at option 1 was looking at field 3 only and creating a multi-purpose field. The cost for that would be 1.7 million.
Jonathan, could you, I think, this is all a great presentation, but I just was wondering if you could state the problem statement. I mean, we're looking at fields, we're making a plan, but is there an urgent need, like, does the track need to be resurfaced now? Some of the data had conditions of the fields, and I don't think we had the conditions stated. So for the community, I was wondering if you could just share what's the impetus behind some of the fields as you go through it.
Yep, so for Field 3, again, football and, for Field 3, football is a no-cut sport. So with the number of athletes and only being able to use Field 3 or 4 times a year in terms of access for that number of athletes, that's an issue for the administration and the athletic department.
So it's not necessarily the condition of the field, except that it is the only grass field in the TVL?
No, the condition of the field, because we only use it 3-4 times.
Is pretty good.
Sometimes it's pretty good when you have rain. But saving that field for that number of athletes causes issues in terms of where do athletes practice and participate.
So the idea would be to make multi-sport, so you can have soccer, you can have lacrosse, you can have football, you can have lots of sports on this one field.
And you'll see that in a future
And
slide.
in the field 1 and 2, the idea of turfing, or looking at field in 1 and 2, the impetus behind that was?
Just because use on that field and weather keeps kids off. So turfing the infield would increase the amount of times that kids could use that field.
So, as a non-sports person, what is preventing the use of this field by other things other than 3 times a year? Like, is it the shape of it? Is it what's?
So Field 3 is a football field. So soccer, I think soccer and maybe lacrosse are the biggest sports, the biggest lined sports fields, and we can't quite fit those onto Field 3.
Okay.
So that becomes an issue for that, and then it's use. So football players tend to tear up a field a little more just by the nature of the sport, and so we need a lot of recovery time on that field to keep it in good shape for, not only to just look nice, but for the safety of players.
Okay.
So we really do limit the use. We limit community use. I typically don't let anybody on there for much, and it's unfortunate because it's a beautiful field and a nice stadium. But in order to keep it that way, you kind of have to limit the uses on it. So
Yeah, we did the Pride Parade around the
Yeah.
week, so that was really nice. Yeah. Okay, thank you so much, because to me that would have totally been over my head, like why this is limited.
And if you try to use it for soccer, because we used to do senior night, it was the only lighted space to be.
Yeah.
The issue that you have is that it's narrow, so you're using sort of a full width, but it's also graded for drainage. So it's an ankle twister. It was really not safe, like for soccer. It's not a field that many other sports can use effectively.
Perfect, thank you.
And I believe we have our quarterback here. What's the middle of Field 3 look
we have
like
an
right
expert.
now? It's probably dirt, right?
A little ripped up.
Okay.
If I could just add, one more, I think, issue that we have is all the practice times, right? So being a fall sport, what gets difficult too is for middle school and JV who practice on Field 1, there's no lights on there. Or if they have a game there and our school times have adjusted to be a little bit later, so getting kids here by the time we're in late fall and it's getting darker earlier, it's getting tougher to have those games on those fields, plus having 8th grade, JV, help me out, varsity, freshman football, right?
Yep.
Having 4 teams practice on a couple of fields, I'm sure it's difficult, right?
Yeah.
A lot of bodies on not a lot of space.
Yeah.
So moving on, looking at the track, and yes, the track has been resurfaced, and it is at end of life again. And again, track and cross-country are no-cut sports, so we offer access to anyone who comes out. Looking at option 2 would be addressing both the track and field 3. The track would become an 8-lane straight and a 6-lane oval. We would be putting in 1,500, that says visitors, it would just be bleachers. And it would be the multi-purpose field for field 3. So that would be addressing, option 2 would be addressing both.
So the oval would widen so that you had more space for the field.
Yes, so
Yes.
if you can imagine the field 3 now and where the visitor stands are, and that kind of juts out a little bit, we would push the whole track back, fill in, do a retaining wall, make the track bigger, which would then give us the opportunity to make the field bigger, and then obviously be able to, host a myriad of sports on that.
So you can see from this slide, it gives you the dimensions. So football is 160 by 360, where soccer is 195, field hockey 180, lacrosse 180, and women's lacrosse 195. So you can see where you don't have that width to be able to accommodate any other sport besides football. Looking at field 7 and 8, this is used by freshman JV varsity football. There's 80 to 90 students. There's an elevation change between the two fields. The condition here is poor. One of the options is to create just parking lot on these fields. It would give 208 parking spaces for $951,000. And as you know, anyone who attends games, you see cars that are all lined up along the loop road. So there is not sufficient parking for spectators and for students, as that will be. Another option for 7 and 8 would be to relocate the tennis courts that are in front of the school to be in the back. So you would put 5 tennis courts, and that would also allow for 89 parking spaces. And just kind of future planning, you'll see if you move the tennis courts to the back, it allows you to create different traffic flow in the front.
Is that green line the center trail? Does the center trail go? I was trying to remember which field you can kind of see.
Center Trail would be off of field 8.
Okay.
The lower fields, that's 7 or 8, the lower one. Do you know?
I'm not sure.
I'm thinking this one. I was thinking it
So
was
it would
back
be,
here
it would
somewhere.
be, yes.
Okay.
So this is an elevation change,
Yeah, it's
right?
an elevation.
Yeah.
Just trying. And would there be vegetation between the sidewalk and the tennis courts? Would we keep trees there? Is there any, do we have to keep a buffer or wetland,
Yes.
or would it be visible from the loop road?
So I think it would be visible from the loop road, but a buffer, kind of what we have there now.
Okay.
Yeah, between the loop road and field 7 and 8.
Because I feel like 7 and 8 are kind of hidden by trees right now, right? You kind of peek in, like, oh, look, there's football. I
Yeah.
always see you guys walk back, or not you anymore, but see football players walking back from practice. You can't really see them. They're not visible from the road.
Not on the lower field.
Yeah.
You're
the
right.
lower
Yeah.
one.
So would our intention be to clear? Would it?
I think we'd have to see what the design is.
Okay. But there's no known restriction of wetland or anything in that
Not
little
there.
space. Okay.
One last question. So this is what came up when I saw this, which is,
This green
are
line
those
here.
courts used for
So we
things
get
like
buffer-
PE
buffer
and
zones
things
outside.
like that? Do we need to have because they're sort of in the back so much, do we need to have easier access to them for in-school physical education stuff and things like that?
So they bring classes down to the turf field, which is right there.
Okay.
During the school day, so it's pretty much in the same location.
Okay.
And one last question. Would there be lighting? When we talk about things that are down, like parking in particular,
Yeah.
and are we talking lighting as well for safety?
Yeah, you see the line here, lighting 580,000.
I can't read it. Oh, there, that one, yes, okay. Yes, I can, okay.
So looking at field 10, the condition for this was fair. This is used by middle school and JV field hockey, 20 to 35 students. In this field, there really are no options. It's limited due to its width and length, and it abuts the wetlands. So there really is no options for any changes on that field.
So it couldn't be a parking lot because of the abutting the wetland?
It would be a difficult spot for a parking lot. It's kind of, field 10 is away from everything.
Well, it is by a lot. I mean, the kids park there.
The kids park there, yeah, but I think if we were trying to turn this into a parking lot for the turf fields or for,
Spectators.
yeah, I think it's pretty far away. And you know, who parks in the J lot? I believe that's the juniors
Yep.
now, and then they kind of cut through the woods to get up through the high school.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the J lot kids try to sneak up into the front of the school as best as they can.
Yep.
Who would
Yep.
agree? Yes.
There's no secrets here.
Field 11, currently used for middle school football, 55 to 60 students. The condition for this field is poor. What we were looking at was a potential of having the tennis courts located here. As you can see from this drawing, there was not an allocation for parking. The tennis courts would be $692,000 and lighting would be $380,000. Field 12 and 13 used by middle school freshman JV soccer, baseball, 95 to 130 students. Field 12 is fair and field 13 is poor. One of the options for this would be a baseball and multi-purpose field for $4.1 million.
With the previous field and the tennis courts, is that an either or? So either the other field gets turned into tennis courts or this one does? Or are
Correct.
we, okay.
Right, we're just looking at all the fields and any option that that field could be used for.
It's kind of a menu.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
So again, any relocation of the tennis courts will allow for additional parking spaces in the front of the school. It could be an additional 130 parking spaces. In 2018, that estimate to create that parking was 1.1 million, and that's a number that would need to be updated.
How, sorry, are you going to address the traffic flow or how it would impact the traffic flow?
So you can change the traffic flow and increase the parking if we're able to relocate the tennis courts, yes.
And we're talking the traffic for parent pickup, it's that issue,
And
right?
drop-off,
Correct.
And drop off, so
Greater queuing.
greater
Yeah.
queuing, okay.
Yes.
You had a great map for that, well, in 2018 probably is, but you had a good, you had like a whole map of,
it's-
yeah.
It's further out because obviously you would have to move the tennis courts
Right.
first anyway.
Yeah.
So just recapping, and again, these are just various options that were all discussed between the administration, the athletic director, and our advisor, Gail. So field 3 only, 1.7 million. Field 3 in the track, 4.2 million. Adding an amenities building to the field 3 and track, that has not been discussed, but basically what that allows is to bring potable water and restroom facilities down to that area, which currently we have neither. So that is something that we added in. Field 7 and 8 parking only would be $951,000. 7 and 8 tennis and parking would be $1.1 million. Adding the lighting to 7 and 8 would be $580,000. Field 10, there are no options for that field. If we did field 11 as tennis courts, it would be $692,000. The lighting for that would be $380,000. Field 12 and 13 as a multi-purpose field would be 4.1. And the additional parking in front of the school is 1.4, and that is an estimate. That's taking the 1.1 and just adding a inflation. So in all these conversations with everyone, what rose to the top is the track and field, field 3 in terms of the priority. So again, this is a visual of access of who can use those fields now. So field 3 is in yellow. It's just varsity football games only. Currently using the track, of course, is cross country and the track. If you were to do both the track and field 3, you can see the number of teams that now would be able to play using these fields and with this improvement. And so that's where we all landed in terms of the number of student athletes that would have greater space to be able to practice and play. So again, what you see in the capital request for 24 is the field 3 and track at 4.2 million and the amenities building at 1.5, so the total ask of 5.8, with the potential of looking at FY25 of doing 7 and 8 as the tennis and parking with lighting, and looking at that front, the 1.4 million for additional parking. So again, wrapping that all up, all that study brought us down to track and field 3 as being the priority. And again, a Community Preservation Act funding application has been submitted for this project. And this is where the legalities of what is fundable will come into play. At least probably $1 million of that will not be able to be funded by the community preservation, but it'll have to go through their legal review.
Okay.
So.
But that's still a huge savings.
It would be.
So am I hearing right that 4.8 could be funded potentially legally?
Potentially. I don't, there's a nuance to the Community Preservation Act about stadiums, and that may get tricky, whether they call this a stadium. So.
I'm sorry, I didn't do the mental math, but I know we're adding significant spectator capacity, right?
Correct.
So can we do field 3 in the track and not do something about parking? Can we? I mean, we can, but I mean, would we have to bundle it with some parking solution next year?
Doing field 3 and the track does not include parking.
I know.
But you're asking, like,
I'm
if more
asking,
people come, where we
should it be a bundled,
yeah.
a package solution? Because now we're bringing all these people. It does get to be a safety concern on the loop road on game nights when you've got cars everywhere. And if there were, heaven forbid, a need to get vehicles, emergency vehicles down there, it gets tight. So I'm just wondering if it's reasonable to delay something to do with parking. Because we're building all this capacity, but where do people go? I mean,
I think that's a really good point.
and do our school lots? I know people don't like to walk, but you know but do the school lots actually? I haven't been to a football game. I can ask you. Do the school lots fill up?
The one
On
by the
game
middle
day?
school does, the
Yeah.
one by the bus loop, but I would say there's a good amount of parking because you still have the senior lot, the teacher lot, people park in that whole bus loop, and then the tennis lot. I wouldn't say it's like a hassle to get out of, but I think there's enough parking for
I feel like
everyone.
the last time I went to a game, it was not at capacity, but it was pretty full. I don't know if you guys have been to a game recently.
I just pick people up at games.
I've been to like other events on that field, and you see the parking, like you said, all the way down the loop road. And you're right, it's, you know, if something were to happen, first of all, it's on a slope, so it's hard for somebody who's been injured to move upwards, and then it would be really hard for the emergency vehicles to get in. I think you're right that it's something we should think about.
So I would say we're talking about almost two different problems. The parking on the loop road really happens at the current turf fields, and that's when we're holding games down there.
Yeah.
So everybody parks there and along the loop road.
Yeah.
I would say for a high school football game, they are using more of the front parking lots. Kind of the same thing when we do a graduation. All the lots fill up. But the loop road hardly gets used in that situation.
Okay.
I would say that field 3 is potentially your linchpin to getting the other things that we need to get done. So because we have so many sports teams and so many kids playing, and currently are stretching our fields to their capacity. This gives opportunity to then take a field 7 and 8 and do something with it, because we won't necessarily need those for sports. They'll have opportunity to play on these fields, field rather than those.
Okay.
So it really helps kind of identify what gets us to the rest of the campus solution, I think, which is why it kind of rose to the top of our list of, out of this whole thing that we've been talking about, it's the piece that gets us there, or begins to get us there.
Yeah, we can't take away fields until we create
Capacity.
this space.
Or solution,
And so, you have to do this first before you would take away another field.
And as we're talking about what potential issues there are issues of weather on these fields. If it's rained for a week, the fields are sloppy. I think if the new athletic director, Kylie Murray, was here, she would tell you that, even after a rain, it's difficult to schedule kids. I got calls the other day on field 10 that there was puddles by the field hockey openings. Now, the day they played, it was sunny and beautiful, but it had rained 2 days before that, So, those are issues that are hard to fix. It's natural grass, drainage is difficult, getting to those things. I think something like this opens up opportunity for more night games, which is, I think, exciting for especially, our varsity kids or our seniors that are graduating, to get to play under the lights, at least a couple times is, I think, a cool thing. I think you play under the lights all the time, so you get it. But so yeah, I think it just opens up a ton of opportunity that they don't currently have. It gets us in our more, worse weather. You're still able to use this and play on it without, having those same issues of safety that you do on a grass field. I think Kylie would also say that there are teams that are becoming less and less willing to play on natural grass fields. Field hockey being one of those sports that you will have teams that won't play on natural grass anymore because of the playability.
But field hockey now plays on the turf, right?
Varsity field hockey does, yeah.
And can they do this in the summer? Like, will we have to sacrifice a season for this project?
It would probably run into the fall.
What does that mean? Like, what would happen?
It's not good for the football team.
Right.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you would have to try to push all of your home games to maybe the end of the season. It would be a scheduling. It would be a scheduling thing that Ms. Murray's very well aware of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've talked about options for that too. We do have the turf down there. We did buy portable goalposts for our winter 2. I forget how we did that year. So there are opportunities to still play at home on the turf. Spectator-wise is where it becomes difficult on those fields. So something that we would still have to work through.
What do you think?
I think that the field 3 is about at its capacity for football. Like right now, there was just an email sent out by Mr. Bishop that doesn't allow the underclassmen to be in the student section of the football games. That's just like one example of kind of how packed the games are getting, just because the town's getting bigger. But I think like the parking that you're talking about and the parking at games are two different things, but the parking for soccer games and the parking for all those turf games, that I think that's related. But also I just think that field 3 is on a hill itself, and I think obviously it's tough with drainage, but it's unique. I feel like even on other grass fields it's not as bad. But
yeah,
it
Crowns,
tough.
Field 3 now it crowns for drainage, and I think there's still, if it rains a lot, over in the end zone closest to the doghouse, on the left side still stays pretty mushy even after a couple days. I don't know if you've noticed that.
Not necessarily
Gotta
that,
get
but
in the end
like,
zone a little more then.
Nice. No,
I'm
I just say
joking
the
with you.
football game. I mean, the thing. I mean, it's the capital situation is. It's a lot of information. It's a lot of dollars, and
Yeah.
but the football games are a real community event, and families. They do the family tailgates now, which are alcohol free. They're family tailgates. They're fun, and the little kids come and they actually play on the fields that you're talking about, turfing. That's another question I have for you. But fields, the practice fields, the kids run around and play their own football while you're playing a real game. And, the middle school kids walk around the track. It's like a really nice atmosphere. And for anyone who's never been to a Friday night football game, I would encourage you, whether you play or watch or not, to go. It's really fun. And a community our size, probably deserves to have a decent facility that can be used by more teams, more students, have more spectators. I mean, the idea that students can't go to the games that are limited, that's really tough.
Well,
They can go.
They're on the side. They're like on the grass.
The student section is very
a
fun.
first-year high school student who has been relegated to the grass. She stares longingly at the bleachers.
And there are a lot of middle schoolers that attend the games.
And there are,
as
yeah.
well.
And the pep band is in the bleachers. I mean, we need space for the pep band. I mean, it really is those are great events, and thank you for those. So while I know taxpayers are concerned about, our investment, I think there's a real need, and there's a real community asset that we're talking about beyond just the school.
Beyond just sports, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like Family Day happens down there, and there's all kinds of events that happen in that area. So having it nicer with more seating, it benefits everybody.
I agree, and I think to the community, we'd be able to open it up to more things than we currently do because of our protection of the natural grass field.
And in like a normal world, I might say maybe you could put it off a year, but as we look down the road, thanks to your planning and just knowing enrollment and everything else, the reality is we just need capacity of all kinds. And if, like with the HVAC, if you push it off, it's just going to bump up against the Elmwood construction or the Hopkins construction or the middle school if we have to do, or the high school if we have to do anything there for capacity. So to me, it doesn't sound like, I don't know what direction we're going to go in, but it sounds like something probably should be done sooner rather than later because bigger expenses are coming.
Yeah. Well, and I'll add, we are at end of life on the current track. And we did have just a quick conversation with our engineering company about it, Gale. And I think we resurfaced the track the last time. So my understanding is that we probably have to do a full upgrade, which would be about $1 million. Just again, that's kind of a napkin guesstimate type of thing as we were having a conversation. But so there's going to have to be some, whatever way we go to keep the kids safe and to keep we're going to have to do something with the track at some point in the very near future anyway. If you it looks nice from a distance. If you take a close look at it, you can see where it's starting to cave in some places and some repairs that we've already done. And so that's going to become a reality for us rather quickly as well.
It's a good perspective.
But wait, there's more.
There's only 20 more slides.
I did
We
say
did
it
ask
was
for
a lot
this,
of
and you are
information.
delivering. You're delivering, yeah.
Yes. All right, so now we are looking at planning for enrollment growth. So as we've discussed several times, the Hopkinton Public Schools has experienced extraordinary growth over the last 5 years. This has resulted in all of our buildings being below the Massachusetts School Building Authority standards for educational space for the current enrollment. If you look at our enrollment from 2009-10 was 3,453, and our projected enrollment for 29-30 is 4,732. So that is the addition of 1,279 students. And as Dr. Kavanaugh has referred to in the past, that is the equivalent of 2 schools. And as a reminder, the designer for the Elmwood project is conducting a district-wide campus study in an effort to capture the deficits in each of the schools using the enrollment projections from Dr. Arthur Wagman, and this study will outline options to address enrollment growth as a comprehensive plan. What we have done in the past, the Marathon School, we are in progress of 4 classroom addition. Elmwood School, we've put on 4 classroom portables. Hopkins School, 4 classroom portables. And the high school, a 6 classroom addition. So that is 18 classrooms that have been added recently. And in the feasibility study for the Elmwood School, for an addition, renovation, or new construction, there will be a determination as to whether this will be a grade 2-3 or a grade 2-3-4 school. What we do know is that the Hopkins School is unable to, at this point, house 2 grades, no matter what grades are in there. The building capacity, according to the MSBA, the existing conditions is 560 students. The current enrollment today is 640 students, and our projected enrollment for 29-30 is 730. So you can see that's an additional 170 students.
Ms. Rutherford, is there a number at, or Mr. Person, is there a number at which we hit a safety threshold in terms of number of occupancy of the building?
That's a good question. Yes, eventually we will hit a number. I don't think we're there yet. I think our occupancies are fine. But as I think we discussed when we did the high school addition, in the 3rd floor of that building, we did not add an additional stairwell, so we had to limit the occupancy of classrooms, I think, to 32, well, people in each classroom to 32. It doesn't necessarily mean students, it's just people. So we could start hitting things like that as we continue to grow. I think just space itself, you're only going to fit so many people in a classroom at some point anyway.
Yeah.
And this is something that you have seen since 2019, the facility assessment that was done by DRA. And the yellow are spaces that are slightly undersized, and those are mostly all of your classrooms. You can see the red, what is significantly undersized. But in addition to the classrooms being undersized, there just are not enough.
So this is 3 years ago. So, right. So that feels like it would have scaled by now. Like something that's minorly, undersized is probably no longer so minorly undersized for the amount of students that we have.
Well, what they do is they look at the MSBA guidelines in terms of a classroom for this grade level should be, and I'll just use a made-up number, 700 square feet. So these may be 600 or 650 square feet, which would make them undersized.
So it's not occupancy based.
It's not occupancy.
Okay, got it.
So that's where you look at these, and the classroom sizes themselves are undersized according to the MSBA. We don't have enough of them, so as a result, the occupancy within each classroom is going up. So when they are looking at it in terms of when you want to use that relationship, that makes them even tighter.
Yeah. Okay, understood.
So again, on the right side, the facility needs assessment in 2019 had identified a potential of needing 9 more classrooms, 2 science classrooms, 2 self-contained special ed, 3 resource rooms, an art classroom, adding to the media center, adding to the cafeteria, and adding miscellaneous administration and custodial areas. So as we said earlier, the Hopkins School currently is unable to fit 2 grades. The estimate for this addition is using roughly 30,000 square feet at $700 a square foot. But again, the district-wide campus study will further refine not only this number, but also what would be in this school when that grade configuration decision is made. So it will still house 2 grades. What those 2 grades will look like from an educational facility may change depending on what those grades are. But in either case, you need the square footage, and an estimate at that cost is where you are here.
So this answers one of the questions I've had the entire time, which is we keep talking about a 3-grade classroom, a 3-grade school, but then we talk about Hopkins still having 2 grades, and we knew capacity was met. So I'm glad to see this in that sense. One question I have is, this is once again from 2019. So the projections for what we need at maximum enrollment, doesn't that also grow now that we have further, and how do we project forward? Because I think one of the things that you know, when I started before all the COVID stuff, one of the reasons I ran was because people tended to feel like they just paid for this thing and already we're adding to it again. And so what yes, 21 million is a ton of money, but if we're going to do this, can we do it to the 2029 projections at least, instead of to what we got, in 2018, so that we're
Agreed.
Not going to have issues.
That's what this is to do, is
Okay.
to build so that we have the capacity for those future projections.
Okay.
And again, that is what that new, so this information is from 2019. Our current designer architect, Perkins Eastman, is doing an update of all that.
Okay.
And so they will identify, again, what the square footage shortage is in each of the buildings, and then give us a dollar magnitude for that. But it will be for the future enrollment.
Yeah, so projected.
Correct.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Is the assumption that if we put on an addition like that, we would take the modulars off that and repurpose them someplace else?
So the modulars from Elmwood, if we are to do something with Elmwood, the thought would be that the Elmwood modulars would come to Hopkins.
In addition to, so we'd have the existing modulars plus the Elmwood plus 9 more
Correct.
classrooms. And this is to keep it as a 2-grade school, but potentially different 2 grades.
Correct. Right. So what we know is that it can't house 2 grades.
Yes.
So what that educational space will look like will be different based on the grades that are there, but you can't house 2 grades.
Class sizes are 30 kids.
They're
essentially.
They're getting up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you hit a critical point where the classroom is physically too small for the number of bodies you need in there.
Yes.
Go ahead, you talk.
That I imagine
Yeah.
that next year, we will take that library media center and have to put 2 classrooms in there, or dismantle the art room, but we can't continue to have classes of sizes of 27.
Yeah.
Like we just,
It gets
I mean, they're
very
25, 26 now, but what will happen next year?
Right.
Yeah.
So those 9 classrooms will bring everything down to a more manageable 20-ish kids in a room, plus or minus a little bit. Is
And
that
this was
sort of
before we put 4 modulars on, the 9 that you
Correct.
see on that slide.
Okay.
So we did alleviate some of that 9 stress, but
Okay.
it's growing again.
Yeah, right.
So, me being me, I'd also like to see things like bathrooms and stuff like that. Like, what are we looking at in terms of shared spaces that the kids frequent? That
And teachers.
There's too many, and then teachers that there's too many children for right now.
Mhm.
Like,
Well,
I-
even
I'd
things
like
like
to
the orchestra room, right? So the
Yeah.
band room in that building is way too small now for the number of kids who are taking instrumental music, right? So those things programmatically, we have to think about that as well.
And if we put 6th grade in there, we need robotic space. And I mean,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
I guess I'm wondering, the 21
Clubs.
million is in it's penciled in the budget for next year, for this coming.
Correct.
Even though we're a little unclear on what grades, and I get that, but in the event that it is a 6th grade, I feel like we might need more. I mean, I feel like there is potentially, like you talk about music for 6th grade, you know, it's different, and robotics, and I just don't know, because if this number is based on elementary programming or sort of the middle school programming, and my other question is, because 6th graders are technically elementary, is like the amount of space a 6th grade body needs in the MSBA calculations the same as a 5th grade? Like, I feel like these are bigger kids, and will they fit in all the other space in Hopkins? Because we have 6th graders can be grown-up size.
So there's different MSBA calculations for different grade levels.
Okay.
So it would be looked at by the designer accordingly to what a 6th grade capacity would be. And that they have been directed to look at some of the shared spaces, such as restroom facilities. And so all of those have been put in their pocket to be adding to this. And again, this is a number that will be further defined as we go further along in this campus study. So
I think that's a really interesting point. So once again, I come from a place where 6th grade was part of elementary. So there weren't new clubs or anything like that, but here they've got the benefit of being part of the middle school, so they get these clubs at 6th grade. So we'd be taking away this like kind of extra richness if we don't bring it with us. And I hadn't thought of that. That's a really interesting point.
On the flip side, it could open it up because a lot of the 6th and 7th grade have been unable to participate in certain things now because the class sizes are so big that now they have to say, okay, this is only for 8th grade because we just can't do it for the 6th and the 7th anymore.
Grade 6 has no access to athletics there.
Right. And 7th grade has been cut out of some sports, so because there's just too many kids. So, I think it potentially could open it up if they're in a different building.
Well, and potentially something, if we had robotics for the 6th graders, it could open it up to the 5th graders.
5th graders, right.
Which, first robotics, 5th graders can absolutely do it.
So they'll be going to Dallas.
So one of the things that Perkins Eastman has told us about the MSBA calculations is there is a new requirement for science, technology, and engineering, which did not exist even in 2019 when this was done. So those calculations are ever evolving. Obviously, they'll use it for the appropriate grade levels and with those additional requirements for science, technology, and engineering. So.
Thank you.
So I'm still wrapping my mind around the timing. On the one hand, I'm thrilled to see this because we've been looking at the enrollment projections, and Hopkins has been in the hot seat. We know that this year, next year, year after, this is, it's going to be really, really tight. It just Hopkins in particular has sort of a peak, and then it has a future peak again. So Hopkins, for some reason, has been on our radar. So we put the 21 million in this capital budget. Well, then we're sort of figuring out what we'll do with it. When would we begin when do you envision beginning to spend or build whatever this shape this takes? Like, when would that be?
So if this was to pass at the May of 23 town meeting, at that point you will have decided on grade configuration.
Yes.
The first thing that we would do is go out for an owner's project manager. So you may get an owner's project manager on board in the fall of 23. Then you will procure for a designer. So you would not have a designer probably until winter of 24. And then you're going to design and maybe start construction 24, 25. So this begins a very long process. So the thought would hopefully be that you would have your Elmwood, whatever configuration is built and wherever it's built, and this opening up at the same time.
Okay.
Which could be 2027.
We're still going to have to get creative at the media center, I think.
Yes,
you never know. I think we're still going to have that interim period. Yeah.
So there's a lot of building going on concurrently.
Yeah.
Which makes sense.
Yeah.
Everyone knows it's been coming. I don't think this is a shock.
No.
Hopefully it's not a shock to anybody. And anyone who has kids in these buildings knows that it's gotta happen. So I think it's a lot of money, but
Right.
everyone has seen it coming for a while, and we've been waiting. And so I think at some point you're gonna have to drop the hammer and say, we need it, and this is the time.
Yes, we're saying it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the price tag is huge, but, you know, at the end of the day, the children are here.
Right.
Yeah,
They're already
there's
here.
no more guessing.
Right, exactly.
And just in terms of the funding, again, not arguing with the need at all, is this what we're estimating is the full price tag for the expansion, even though we kind of take it in phases of actual expenditure, like we'll do design phase, or, is there any logic to breaking this out in phases, or do we have to have the money in order to get a project manager? Do we have to have secured funding from the town to prove that we'll pay for it?
So I think the timing of the debt really would be a discussion with the town.
Okay.
What would happen is this would authorize the debt.
Okay.
But you wouldn't actually take the debt until you start spending.
Okay.
So your OPM would not be 21 million, and the town would not take a $21 million debt July
Next year.
1.
You're right. Yeah. And then, so when we talk about Elmwood, one of the big things we keep talking about is we can't really build onto the building while kids are going to school there because it'll cause huge disruptions. So this seems like a very big project that will cause huge disruptions. So is that going to be, like, it seems like there might be additional cost to, like, figuring out what to do with students when they're displaced from certain classrooms or from certain parts of the school. Is that something that the PMO or designer will determine when we get to that point, or is
Yeah,
that
so
something?
you probably would not see construction within the building. It would be similar to what we're doing now with Marathon, extending out the back. So it is occupied construction, similar also to what we did with the high school.
So it would be a new wing
It-
completely
correct.
instead of rebuilding any of the current space.
Right.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, a perspective would be if it's 30,000, if it indeed is 30,000 square feet, that's about a third of the size of the building now. So I mean that's a pretty big chunk of
It's a
building you're
hefty
adding on.
wing. Yeah. Okay.
And would assuming not, but would any of this cause you to rearrange the HVAC timeline? Does any of this disrupt, like, the units that you've scheduled for Hopkins? in the
No,
next couple
so
of
I
years?
think with an addition onto that building would come its own
thing.
Yeah, so
Okay.
we wouldn't try to extend what's there.
Okay.
It would be brand new.
Can we let Robert leave? I feel bad for him. Do you want to leave?
I'm fine with staying.
You're okay?
I don't have classes tomorrow, so.
Okay, good. I was like,
Man, Robert, rub it in. All right.
I was thinking the poor dude. He's gonna go to school tomorrow.
You're a trooper.
I think we asked all our questions.
Yeah. You sure you want to put that slide up there? We may have hit our quota.
You want to start over?
I thank you for everything.
Yeah.
Like, it's so detailed and wonderful. And I'm gonna go through it again. so I
It's a
didn't have
lot,
questions, but it was-
and that's why I kind of forewarned you.
Yeah.
It is a lot.
It's great.
Take it in.
Yeah.
And we'll do this all over again in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Nancy, but seriously,
Let's
both
start
of
with this
you.
slide.
It's an excellent. It's an excellent. It was so much.
Yeah.
It was great information. It was really clear. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Nancy, when we have the meeting in 2 weeks, can we open it with a public forum or hearing or whatever it is that we can do that we don't have to publish 6 weeks in advance? To open up an opportunity for dialogue on this is a lot to take on, and it would be really, I don't think for the vote, we have time to schedule the one that takes all the lead time.
We don't have
Thank
time.
you. But I think that we could do a forum where that we've done like in the past, maybe to just be able to open up for the community.
Let people
to
come and
ask us questions
Yes.
with some dialogue. I
If we could get people here, that would be wonderful, because I think the more people who hear this message, the better off we are, just in terms of transparency and need and all of those things.
Yeah.
I agree. That's a good idea.
Yeah, and especially because the two of you bring such clarity to this, and during town meeting, people are always like, okay, move on, vote. So like having the ability to just spend some time and ask really in-depth questions, and I think you're right. I think this is a great idea, Amanda.
And it's a lot for the community to look at this. We need to bring them along to understand the need and to understand what their concerns are.
Oh, yeah.
In looking at it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's
We're
a
like,
lot.
it's like $50 million in expenses, and people are going to say, what? So you can say, no, it's not today. It's planning it.
But on the flip side, they've been asking, they're like, can we plan for future enrollment
Right,
instead
which
of,
is great.
in good, again, good intentions, not realizing that unless we want to foot the entire bill, up until recently at the MSBA you couldn't, right? So now now we can plan for ahead, and it's going to cost some money.
Yeah.
So come and tell us what you think. And we did, we asked for facilities last meeting or even the meeting before, and then you came up with 50 slides about facilities, but it's huge. To think about adding 1,500 students, that's how many more athletes, how many more musicians, how many more clubs, how many more activities that need a space to do their thing. So seeing that list of facilities that need upgrades based on the number of kids that have come in just in the last 10 years is huge, but important, and people are asking for it. So now you have it, and there's a big price tag associated with it, but I get, that's the reality of things. So I think it's important, and people can hopefully weigh in on it. Yeah.
But I think about it too, because you're not just adding classrooms, you're adding teachers and desks and all the things that go along with it. So it's going to affect the bottom line forever.
Operational expenses and stuff. Yep.
I think those are good questions.
It might be helpful when we talk about it. It'll help me to put together at the top all the slides that have to do with what we're asking for next year, and then maybe put in the appendix, or it's sort of the stuff that's the future plan. It's hard to take it all on. I still feel like, should I be picking tennis courts right now? I'm not sure. So it's a lot to take in for the community. They maybe help at least, or to make it clear on the slide that this is for this year and this is for the future, so that as people are going through it, even if we just flag it.
Yeah, I think we kind of call it out in the beginning of it's just that we went through 53 slides. If you go back to the beginning, I think it calls out what we're looking for in 24.
Yes, it did. It's a beautiful presentation. And then I just got off the plane, and it's a real long day. Where do the tennis courts go, and the parking lots, and
Oh, believe me, look at this for a couple of weeks. I popped a few more grays out of my beard.
All right, so what I'm hearing is we want to do a forum next time to bring the community and to have some back and forth. Yep. Love the presentation. It's different than how you've done presentations in the past in terms of having the mission statement and all of that integrated right in. It makes it easy for following along. So thank you for all that. I can only imagine how long it took you to put that together. So.
I love it's all connected back to our buckets to fill. You did really wonderful.
So we can let this percolate for 2 weeks. In the interest of time, I am going to recommend that we move the policies in to do our goals next time.
Yeah,
is there anybody who would
that's a
like
good
to
idea.
Do it tonight, or do you mind?
I don't think I could.
Same.
We appreciate honesty here.
I'd be
For
honest,
sure.
yeah.
All right, so then let's go right into items by consensus.
There we go. All right, as superintendent, I recommend the school committee approve the items by consensus as outlined in your agenda.
So moved.
Okay, motion by Amanda. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Holly. All those in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Excellent. Then I would seek a motion to adjourn.
So
Motion
moved.
to adjourn.
Oh, wow, we have 3.
Second. All right, so who had the motion?
Holly did.
And then Leah had the second. All those in favor?
Aye.
And we are adjourned at 9:58. Our next meeting is here on October 27th. Thanks, and
Thank you so
for
much.
all the
I always have to see you guys.
Good night.
Yeah, sure.